All right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your host Ben, and this is your Week 24 review show. It's a day late. I was watching the Super Bowl on Sunday, and Monday was a little bit of a slog. So I was a little late trying to get everything in, but I did want to. I did still want to cover the week because while not necessarily a ton happened between the actual table, there are a couple things that I did want to talk about with basically the main teams in the title race, which is Arsenal, Man City, and Liverpool. And I did say Arsenal first, and there'll be a reason why I lead off with that. As far as the leading story, I think one thing that I went into was kind of hate watching a little bit. I wanted to see maybe City could drop something, or maybe Arsenal even for playing their bogey team versus West Ham, and nothing like that happened. And frankly, all three games featured needing set pieces to get their first goal. So I thought that was interesting. Arsenal won 6-0, but it took a while for them to actually get their opening goal, and then everything just kind of created a little bit on West Ham and David Moyes. And Man City weren't necessarily at their flying best either. Yeah, it was at the Etihad, but it was also it's that early game. That early game, or can sometimes on Saturday can sometimes be ripe for upsets. And I am a little bit worried about Liverpool having to go to Brentford to start this coming week, this coming Saturday, in the early kickoff. So that could be a bit of a upset watch, which I'll be getting to. But but it wasn't just that. Like, I was trying to hate watch Man United on Sunday, and lo and behold, that one didn't work out for me either. So not necessarily the best weekend for that, but lots of excitement still. Table didn't necessarily take shape, but we are starting to get some different storylines, so that's always good. And as I mentioned, I will get started with leading off with the title race, and I will get started with West Ham and Arsenal. And as everyone knows now, they won 6-0. The first goal with Saliba. Interesting that they have Declan Rice now taking their free kicks, which I thought was surprising. He's like 6'1". You figured he'd be pretty good option in the air, and that has to be a new thing because I remember they beat Man United back in, I don't know, September or earlier in the season, on a late corner kick where Declan Rice was kind of in the box. He was a target man. Then they get a really quick second with Saka, and then really just everything just kind of created on them. Another free kick goal with Gabriel. It's another really good delivery by Declan Rice. I mean, that's another thing too. His delivery is really good. And then Trussard, a couple minutes after that. So I mean, just you looked, and there was like I don't know, a 5 minute stretch where just West Ham just almost completely gave up. And it went from being just a 2-0 kind of game to 4-0. It didn't necessarily feel that way, but at the same time, West Ham did not compete, and I'll probably get into a little bit why. And then Saka early with a late PK, and then Rice, or maybe no, Saka gets another goal to get a second one. The second one is PK. The fifth one is really nice, open play goal, and then Rice with possibly maybe goal of the day, with or maybe Trossard's was pretty good as well. But Rice gets basically his one shining moment, as you would say. That if Rice would have dreamed the day before, returning back to that stadium, a place he was at the club for, I think they said 15 years, and topping off it, not just he was fantastic without the ball as well, but just tapping off that kind of performance with that kind of goal. Yeah, that's probably something he would have enjoyed, and I'm sure he did, especially because he hasn't played that great versus his former team. That has been a story coming into this. Arsenal have not been great versus West Ham, and basically West Ham had been Arsenal's bogey team. In the last couple of times they played together. It was only a year ago where they had a 2-0 lead at the London Stadium, and they lost that. And that's possible something that Arteta reiterated to his side to not let up like they did last year, because that's basically where they really did lose the title. Now I know they lost to Man City at the Etihad, but it was the combination of dropping the 2-goal lead at Anfield, and then the very next game dropping that 2-goal lead to West Ham. That really is where they lost the title. And then they had that performance with Southampton, where I think they also dropped points. Where I think I don't remember if they actually dropped a lead. It's possible they conceded first. I think there was even possibly a Ramsdale mistake where Southampton got their first goal. But it was those games, not necessarily the main one at the Etihad. That didn't necessarily help them either. And then Declan Rice also had a howler, just personally, in that game back in November, where he made a mistake, maybe not necessarily marking Bowen or getting lost a little bit on Bowen on the West Ham first goal, and then he committed a PK very late in the game, and I think David Raya even saved it, so it could have been a 3-0 kind of loss. So it was big for Rice just to get some of those demons out of his way, for Arsenal to get those demons out of their way, and the one thing that kind of got lost a little bit in that West Ham game is because I think the reason why a little narrative set in is because they were so bad versus Fulham. But in the December game, they weren't bad. They had like 30 shots and created 7 big chances. And I am wondering a little bit if one, Havertz wasn't able to play that day. I think he was suspended. And two, Gabriel Jesus missed a number of chances for them. And when I get into Arsenal kind of, for this game and a little bit after that, I'm going to spend a lot of time on Arsenal today. Uh, I am starting to wonder if Jesus is actually the problem, and what Arteta has maybe figured out is Trossard works better for them instead. And it's not as easy as just playing Trossard instead of Jesus, because Trossard isn't really great at holding on to the ball. That has been a theme when Arteta has tried to do that. But when you can have maybe Havertz doing that instead, Trossard basically kind of drops deeper and almost plays as in midfield in moments. And then when you get into the final third, you almost switch it. Then you can start to maybe make this work a little bit. And I don't like the idea of just playing Trossard through the on the wing and maybe sitting Martinelli, because you miss what Martinelli offers. And I mentioned that last week. And so I was wondering, is there a way to fit Trossard into this where without really disrupting what Martinelli offers as well? And I think Arteta found it in this game, and so that'll be a theme that I get to later on. And then with West Ham, they beat Arsenal in the cup, kind of handily, to be honest, and they won that game at the Emirates. And what's weird is they went into this game losing to Man United 3-0, but I thought they actually played pretty okay. They had like 25 shots or something versus Man United. Onana had a decent day, but they weren't really great at putting those chances on goal. I think only one actually came to Bowen. Uh, so they had a number of those looks, but it was coming in like Ben Johnson and I think Emerson. Emerson didn't necessarily have his best day either defending or offensively. And so I think, and you can really go back to that Arsenal game where that was probably the last time West Ham somewhat had a performance, and they were kind of outplayed that day as well. But the reason why I say that is there's something that happened in the first 20 minutes of that game. They lost Lucas Paqueta to an injury, and after that, they lost Kudus to African Cup of Nations. Either warming up or even for the tournament. They finally got Kudus back, but you're seeing how much of a difference Lucas Paqueta makes to this team. It almost becomes unfunctional without him being able to play. No one else can be that creative. And they also did something weird in the January transfer window, and I don't know if it was a contract issue or what. But they sent away Pablo Fornals to I think Real Betis, and they sent away Saeed Ben Rama to, I believe, in Lyon. One of them might have been sold, but maybe one of them is still on loan. And I don't think their squad is deep enough to do that. And you see that in some of the selection here. You had Kudus Bowen and then Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson is like a fullback. Sometimes he's been tried in midfield a little bit, but really he's a defensive minded player. He's not really an attack minded person. He's not really going to threaten you when he gets the ball either. And that is something that maybe Arteta just kind of noticed, 20 minutes into the game, because he basically had Ben White was supposed, we should have been like worried a little bit about, Johnson maybe making a run behind him, and he didn't have to do that. Ben White was basically able to play in midfield almost by himself, kind of centrally. And what all that really did is that just cluttered up the midfield for Arsenal. West Ham had no way to get the ball to win it back, and they were just sitting ducks, just watching Arsenal pass around them. And So you saw that backfire in 2 ways, and maybe the idea was to play Ben Johnson to maybe double up on Saka because, Emerson was not really having fun, doing that either, and Ben Johnson wasn't really doing that either. So, it was, this did not, work out, for West Ham, which you see in the stats as well. I mean, it started off okay. It did take a while for Arsenal to get going, but after about 20 minutes or so, it was just a attacking wave after wave. West Ham were not really able to win the ball back. They looked really confused. They didn't have many touches for Bowen or Kudus. They just couldn't get going, and so I think that kind of a factor that was kind of the theme of the game. And then with Arsenal, one thing I was wondering is this is going to be different than the Liverpool game. So what is Arteta going to do? You can't really play Havertz probably the way you did as a false nine. Uh, is he going to play or Jorginho kind of next to Rice to give Rice some help? Because that is maybe the one fault that Declan Rice has. And what saw happen is Jorginho was benched, and there was no Zinchenko. And so usually you would think, oh, maybe Zinchenko would kind of invert, and he would be kind of the supply man next to Declan Rice to kind of help him out. And that didn't happen either. Kiwar played, and seeing no Zinchenko, there was no Gabriel Jesus. You could have maybe imagined Arsenal kind of coming into this, maybe struggling versus West Ham's deep block, because for the most part, West Ham had been able to prevent teams from being able to attack on them in open play. They've been rather kind of dogged a little bit. Now, Man United had success, and Liverpool I think thumped them earlier on in the cup. I think 5-0. But after that Liverpool game, they turned around and they actually beat Man United in the game in the cup in the regular season, and that was the same week they beat Arsenal. So West Ham, for the most part, have actually been okay defending without the ball, playing with 20% of the ball, and just trying to do some counters. But it was different this game, and the questions are why. And I'm going to basically point to Paqueta. Paqueta wasn't there to help out with duels and to help out to actually see Jared Bowen making those runs. You really couldn't get Kudus involved, and I think eventually that just takes a toll out of you when you have to just defend constantly, wave after wave. You can't kick the ball long to Bowen. He's not really going to win the ball versus William Saliba trying to hold the ball up. That was an issue, so they weren't able to really go long to push Arsenal back. Saliba was able to handle Saliba and Gabriel were able to handle Bowen and Kudus trying to go long. And West Ham, when they did have the ball, the few moments they did, they weren't able to find them. They didn't have enough quality to pick out those passes. West Ham was just so poor on the ball that played a role into their demise as well. Someone like Kurt Zuma, maybe he's a good defender, but when he's got the ball at his feet, he treats it like a bomb. And that was a problem too. So they were just and everything just kind of kept just collapsing on them. Arsenal didn't even have to really press. They just kind of if they got within like I don't know 8 feet of a West Ham player, it almost seemed like they were too terrified of the ball. And so in the first, like I said, the first like 20 minutes, it wasn't terrible for West Ham. I mean, Kudus picks the ball off Kiwar, but Rice does a really good job to sprint back and just basically stops this counterattack. It does take a while, a little bit for Arsenal to get going. I was wondering again if Jorginho and Zinchenko were going to be, missed. But Arsenal around like maybe the 15th, 20th minute, things kind of changed. In the beginning, you saw Declan Rice a little bit by himself. After that, you saw Odegaard dropping deep to kind of be someone, but that wasn't really working out. So you saw sometimes it would be Kiwar playing somewhat next to him. It would sometimes be Ben White, and really it ended up kind of being Ben White, and that allowed Odegaard to be a little further ahead. But what we really saw about from the 20th ish minute mark was, or maybe it was even the 12th minute. I can't really remember. You saw them go back to a double pivot, and they tried to do that box four shape like we saw versus Liverpool. And once they did that, basically you had West Ham having two trying to mark four, and Arsenal just had options everywhere, and you always had the threat in behind with Martinelli and Saka. So it's not like West Ham were able to really do anything to solve that with their fullbacks. It's not really you don't really want Kudus to drop in. He doesn't really want to defend narrowly. You caused their structure really disrupted what maybe West Ham wanted to do, and what the fix was is just kind of set off. Maybe you just defend all game, and it was taking Arsenal a while to actually make any of that possession really matter. Yeah, like I said, in the first 25 minutes, I think it was, or even the first 15 minutes, it was 90% possession advantage to Arsenal. But they weren't really able to really create any problems. So what happens here? And there was maybe a chance. I think they are able to get maybe Saka to turn it over, and it's the one time they do have a numbers advantage. Ben Johnson is able to get in behind Ben White. He's streaking up the field, and he has a look to square a ball to Kudus, and Kilwar is there to stop the block. Maybe they even score this goal without Kilwar. Because Gabriel and Saliba were kind of out of the picture, but it was like the one just kind of moment they were able to get in behind a little bit. But it's Ben Johnson on the ball, yeah. So it didn't really come to anything, and that really was kind of the moment where, and then there was kind of maybe a moment later where Martinelli lost the ball. There was a Bowen was making a free run upfield, but he has no help. He has to go along, and just the shot is kind of weak. But that was kind of it. After that, there was just it was all Arsenal. And so I want to talk about a couple of the chances they had before the goal. So in the 22nd minute, there's a soccer cross to Trossard. Oh, and it goes over the bar. He has a header that goes over the bar. But this comes from Saka winning the ball first off Emerson. And then later, Emerson isn't close enough to really stop a free cross. But Arsenal have their entire back line in the West Ham half. Just West Ham are just sitting off at this point. They don't know what to do. And it's also come from Arsenal kind of having the ball, maybe doing some crosses in. West Ham are just booting it away, and they're constantly just again treating the ball like it's a bomb. I think that's a shot. That's something that Barca's coach Xavi has had a nice quote in the past. They don't really want it. Hot potato would be another kind of, I guess, analogy. But they're just freaking out about it, and all you're doing is just giving the ball back, and that's just allowing Arsenal to keep their lines further and further up, and eventually Osaka just gets the ball on the wing. Emerson is just kind of watching. He doesn't want Saka to humiliate him, so he's just like, here, have a free cross. And Russell does a really good job to make it run, and it kind of splits between Zuma and a guard. And the reason why this happens is because Zuma is worried about Havertz being behind him, and so Zuma has to worry about Havertz. It's allowing Trossard to actually make a pretty good run, and he gets in a pretty good spot. He just doesn't convert it. And then there's another chance that Trossard has a really nice volley, and this just forces a really good save. But here, Ben Johnson gets the ball poked off him, again by Saka doing good defensive work, and that is something that he is dramatically or tremendously underappreciated. Saka and Martinelli both do a lot of really good running, tracking back and working without the ball. It's not easy to get your attacking players to be good defensively. Arteta has that in both of his wingers, and sometimes they don't have necessarily the best end product. Well, last year they did, but this season they've struggled a little bit. Uh, but they haven't gone away from that, and so Osaka wins the ball off Ben Johnson, and I do think again Moyes messed up by playing Ben Johnson. I know they're struggling for options, but you could have maybe tried. I don't know. You could have tried. I want to say Danny Ings, someone like a Cornet, I believe, was available. You could have maybe tried someone like that. Uh, you could have tried by Kudus on the other side, and maybe I don't know, maybe Bowen through on the right, and then maybe actually Danny Ings through the middle. But what he did did not work because he wasn't helping when he had the ball because he lost it here. And Emerson again was just basically on an island all game, so that didn't help either. And so Arsenal able to break again. Ederson Alvarez slides to get the ball off Trossard, so he does well here. But Havertz is shadowing, and he's right there to win the ball back and keep it in Arsenal's possession. Saka then gets the ball from Odegaard, plays it to Martinelli, who makes him run into the box from the right side, and then Martinelli is crossed into the box, basically goes to two unmarked players. Havertz even ducks here, and maybe he gets a call from Trossard, and Trossard just has a really good hit and forces a good save. This is on goal. And again, Trossard in the box is quite clever. He's probably their best pure finisher on the team. And just the issue is how do you really fit him without losing what you have elsewhere? And Arteta maybe found it. And so the play before the corner kick, Arsenal again have the ball, and there's just no pressure. No pressure on the ball carrier. This is fairly easy for Rice, who picks out a good pass to Kai Havertz, finding a little pocket of space unmarked, and then Havertz turns, runs the ball. He sees Trossard wide open to his side, completely unmarked as well, because West Ham, again, they're just running backwards. They're unaware where Trossard is even running to. And then because that's kind of the goal that they have, they don't want to allow a transition attack, so they're just letting Arsenal to set up with the ball in the final third and just defend from there. Only Arsenal get a corner kick from this. The cross is eventually sent in, it's blocked, and Arsenal score from the corner kick. and it is Saliba, and it is funny enough because it is Declan Rice with the delivery. But man, is this really good delivery? It's got great height. It's got curl on it. The keeper has to guess where it's going. He's not able to get to it, and Saliba is just there for the easy put away. And it's another set piece goal for probably the best. I think it is the best piece team in the league, and that was before they had Rice on corner kicks, and they scored a second one later after that. And then there's another chance just shortly following where Saka has a good save by Areola. And Arsenal is starting to play with their feet a little bit. The goal, I think, relaxed them. Odegaard is starting to glide on the ball again, and he's getting into pockets near the box. But Arsenal want him. Arsenal don't want Odegaard to be overlapping with Saka out away from the play, or being forced to kind of be behind the play too much, where maybe he's doing some build up action, and then Arsenal are trying to attack, and Odegaard's just away from it. Yeah, Arsenal were doing a pretty good job to get Odegaard the ball where he can be most dangerous, and he has a very good threaded ball to find Saka's feet. It's quick one-touch passing, and Saka makes a good run, and he's only closed out. It's actually a pretty good save by Ariel. Ariel, reads it. He runs out and does a pretty good job. But Emerson again is looking lost, and he struggled versus Garnacho last week as well. It hasn't been a good week for Emerson, and then they get the second one just a couple minutes later with or basically it's a soccer PK, but it comes from the open play. Uh, and it did feel it was only a matter of time before they would get a second. And it's another example again with zero pressure. And so what happens here is Trossard runs all the way to Rice and Saliba. No one follows him because again West Ham have their line set up, and they don't really want to fall for that. They don't want a defender to follow Trossard, but there's no switching. And again, West Ham were just kind of dogged there. They have their lines and they're just kind of set. And when Trossard gets the ball, he sees Saka making a run in behind and plays a wonderful through ball over the top. At this point, it's similar to what happened with the Liverpool game just a week ago. The center backs don't really have anyone to mark at this point, and so Saka is making a run from wide to go through the middle. And he's lost Emerson, and in this case, I think he gets behind a guard, and it's also just wonderful. It's a wonderful weight on the ball by Trossard, and I'll get to it. I think Trossard was probably their man of the match, at least in that first half. A lot of this action happened because of the movement that Trossard was having. Now he doesn't necessarily get all the glory. He does get a wonderful goal later on, but West Ham could not handle him, but they also couldn't handle Havertz, and it was that combo that was the secret sauce a little bit here. And again, I think maybe Trossard or Arteta kind of worked on this because there's no Zinchenko. And Kiawara is basically staying mostly on the touchline. So he's forcing Kudus to just kind of mark him. And so no one is able to just kind of, switch off to Trossard. And I don't think someone like a Rice plays this kind of ball. Now, I don't even think Jorginho maybe does, but Zinchenko would have. But Trossard, because there were moments when Arsenal had this kind of pass versus Aston Villa a couple of weeks ago, or back in December. And that was the game when Arsenal were able to get behind a few times, but it was always late. Trossard is able to recognize it early enough and floats a perfect ball with perfect weight. And again, it's very similar to how Arsenal were able to beat Liverpool by having Havertz or the quote unquote striker. In this case, it was Trossard to run to the ball. That gives the defenders no one to really mark, and you have to guess who's going to make the run, and they weren't able to guess it. And then Saka's brought down, and funny enough, he takes the PK. And the reason why I say that is, in that game when Arsenal did lose 2-0, or we did drop points, lost the 2-0 lead, I guess I'll say. When it was 2-0, Arsenal had a PK to make it 3-0, and Saka missed the PK. Everything really did kind of crater after that. I think we saw Saka didn't necessarily have a good game after that. Shortly after that, they played in the Europa game, and they lost Saliba. So everything really did kind of, or maybe they had lost Saliba even before this. Maybe even Holden was playing in this game, and that was also kind of a problem where you were starting to see that factor in a little bit. That actually is probably what happened. But everything really did kind of, create a little bit of that. So you can maybe say it was losing Saliba first, but it was also this. And then they get the third with the Gabriel. Again, Trossard draws the free kick, and then Rice has the perfect free kick. Take it in, whips it with perfect weight again, and Gabriel just has to just get contact to score, and he does. And then we get the fourth goal, and it's what a finish this is by Trossard. And I did say last week I felt like he was the best pure finisher in the squad. And, it's shots like this that had me kind of wanting to double down a little bit on that. But I do think he was player of the half. And so it is fitting he gets the goal. He has a little exclamation point on it. And it's one of those goals of the weekend. Rice later on is maybe better. But this was quite good too. It's just a great strike in the box. He gets it, he takes a touch, and then he curls it into the corner. And again, Jared Bowen, he gets bullied in the air by Gabby. The West Ham are just trying to go long, trying to just have something to relieve pressure, and they can't. Gabriel wins the ball back, and then Izuma then has a clearance header, and it heads it right to Havertz, who's there to help out again. It's a good performance by him. And there's a mix of Odegaard being able to find the right pass in the box, and Trossard is able to get it. He takes a cut touch to get it onto his right foot, and just one-two touch here to set himself up, and then he has just a great curler. And it's stuff like this that they have lacked. It's stuff they lacked in many games last year, and they've lacked in many games this year. And I don't necessarily know if you can't just blame it on Jesus because Jesus hasn't played much. But Havertz doesn't do this. Havertz doesn't have this kind of shot, or he doesn't make this kind of decision. So that's the reason why you can't just play Havertz as a false nine every game, because stuff like this won't always work. But when you have Trossard doing it instead, it does. And the reason, and it goes back to what I was saying before too. Trossard, when you're going long, or when you need someone to hold on to the ball to kind of link up play, or you need someone to just kind of keep it. Trossard is not going to win those battles versus those center backs. He just hasn't. We've seen that tried before, and it doesn't work. Havertz will, and so the interchange that they're able to do, and they had a pretty good connection with each other. Now it is only one game, but if they're able to repeat this kind of performance, this Arteta has fixed Arsenal, fixed everything that everyone has been complaining about, including me. Fixed how these issues with Rice come into play as well, because it wasn't Rice isn't by himself anymore. He has options near him, and they found a way to fix Odegaard. You can't always put pressure and zero in on Odegaard either. This makes them a significantly different, more different team to defend, and they're already good without possession. So this is the change. Now they win 6-0, and a couple of these are from set pieces. But it's the change that they were able to do here that really did just make West Ham, cry to fall to their knees. And this on the back of what they did versus Liverpool too, because they played differently. They had Jorginho in that game, and they still had the box four. So they're showing a way they can do this. They can play Havertz in two different ways, and this was impressive. It really was. And so halftime thought was I was just raving over Trossard and Havertz, but it was also another thing that we've seen is the last few weeks Saka's been playing differently. He's not just waiting to get the ball on the touchline, or he's not coming to the ball. We saw that in a couple of those games too. Versus Crystal Palace, he was running to the ball to get it, and maybe that works for Crystal Palace, but I don't really want that. If I'm Arsenal, I want Saka to always be an outlet further up, and we've started to see Saka make runs off the ball through the middle, both from when Arsenal are trying to hit balls over the top or in the box centrally. We saw Saka and Martinelli honestly having free roams into the box. We saw that a lot. Martinelli is on the right side at times. Saka is on the left. Saka through the middle. It was a lot more fluid action than we have seen, or than we had seen in those December times when Arsenal were struggling a little bit. So you know, it was after Christmas when there was maybe it was even in the FA Cup. Arsenal had a little break. They went to like Dubai. They went somewhere to, maybe it was Turkey, to relax a little bit, and they maybe worked on some things because they've been a different team since then. It's a good sign of a good coach. Arteta was able to fix some things. So there's been some talk about that. Maybe Arteta is just kind of a figurehead. Maybe he's just trying rah motivator kind of guy. Maybe not. Maybe there's something else to him. And whatever they discussed, whatever they figured out, it's been stuff like this, and they are a better team now. And assuming they can keep everyone fit, now that is a massive thing. Rice has played a lot of minutes. Same as Saka. But they can keep everyone fit. This is a team that can not only push for EPL title. I don't think they're going to just necessarily go away. I do favor them to make a pretty good Champions League run. You're watching, yeah, who that competition is. I'd favor them versus Bayern, right now. Maybe Real Madrid would be rough, but it feels like, you know, if Leipzig are probably gonna be knocked out, you imagine PSG versus them would be interesting, but I feel like Saliba and Gabriel could maybe handle, Mbappe trying to run at them. PSG would be probably the one that could maybe scare them a little bit if they get that draw. Obviously they'd want to avoid Man City, but it just feels like, and I guess, Real Madrid would be the other, but it feels like Arsenal are already in like a top four contest where you feel like they'd be top four at least you would favor. So I think, and the way that they're, Real Madrid are playing like Tony Cruz in the midfield still, I would maybe favor Arsenal, versus them. I don't know. That would be a pretty good fun matchup, if we got that for a semifinal. But, I think Arsenal are in a pretty good setup, again, and I've been one of those that has been trying to downplay them all year, and so this was because it's stuff like this. Another thing that Arteta realized, Rice can't do it by himself. There was, I think they saw what everyone else saw after the Fulham game, because it wasn't the West Ham game, it was the Fulham game that really made it, 'cause it was back to back, but they were so poor versus Fulham, and they were so slow. That's when everyone was like, "Uh-oh, there's maybe a problem here." Rice has started to have a pivot partner, and it doesn't have to be someone that's always next to him. It's someone that just drops in at moments, so it's fluid. And so, but you saw that. You saw someone next to Rice really at all times in this game. So that was a theme too. And with West Ham were standing around, just kind of waiting for Arsenal to beat them, and they did. And again, the miss of Paqueta cannot be exaggerated more. It has to be repeated pretty much anytime you talk about them. And they weren't really competing, and unfortunately, they weren't able to get Jared Bowen really going at all. Against Libra and Gabriel, were handling them, and fans could see it. Fans were basically, they upped and left a little bit at halftime. And again, I think Moyes didn't mess up playing Ben Johnson the way he did. Maybe it somewhat worked versus Man United. I don't necessarily know if that's the case either, because Emerson got cooked in both games, and if you're playing him to double up on the right winger. Well, that didn't necessarily work out for 2 weeks in a row. So you're playing Ben Johnson in a position. It's not his fault, really. He's playing in a position that's not really fit for him. So I think maybe he just didn't want someone like a Cornet to be. Maybe he thought that would be too attack minded. Maybe he didn't want to play Kudus or Bowen there. To play Danny Ings, but what he did not work. So we'll have to see if he learns from that or not. Obviously, it would have been Paqueta, or it would have been like a Pablo Fornals, or even a Ben Rama. But they decided to move on from them. So what Moyes has done has been kind of shaky the last few weeks, and it is a shame because he had uh, such a good turnaround season, and they still, if they get Paqueta back, they can still do stuff in Europa. It is worth saying that they were basically sixth in the table. I think around at the start of the new year. Now things are starting to little crater a little bit, and you did kind of imagine that where they were missing Kudus to a couple of nations and Paqueta, but when you see fans immediately leave because they're not competing, and it's not the first time for that. Fulham, I think, blasted them 5-0. Liverpool blasted them, I think, 5-1, as well. They're on the back of losing to Man United 3-0. It's not necessarily it's kind of toxic a little bit again for Moyes, and we'll see how they're able to handle it. But it could be his last time, his last few months at the club, and that is a shame because he did feel like he had turned it around a little bit. But at the same time, you see that there is a ceiling to this club, and is it enough for West Ham fans to just stay above relegation? Maybe even in some moments, if you have injuries, you're going to actually be in a relegation fight, or do you want something else? They've recruited well, but is that David Moyes, or is that the person that they brought in to recruit? Bringing in Paqueta, bringing in Alvarez, bringing in which I think has been pretty good buy. Bringing in, because you lost Rice, but Alvarez was like 30 million, and you sold Rice for like 100. Bringing in Kudus. Keeping Bowen, and you're doing this without Antonio. So there've been some instances there. I don't think they've necessarily recruited the best defensively. It can be maybe said about that. Sufal looks like his race is run. He's not looking nearly as good as he's been in the past. Emerson has some pretty good qualities on the ball. But offensively, he can be yikes. And then Zuma, likewise, Zuma just he doesn't seem he really wants to do any kind of role in possession or build up. And so teams can recognize that. It's easy to press West Ham into mistakes. They boot the ball away, you win it back, and then uh, their pressing structure isn't necessarily ideal either. They're just allowing you to have the ball. So it's hard to play like that consistently for a full year. Now maybe you can do that in cup runs, which is what they did last season. But I don't know. I'm just kind of theorizing a little bit. And then right before the fifth goal, I want to talk about this. So Odegaard runs to drop deep to start the move, and then Arsenal kind of move the ball up in the West Ham end. They're not really going long quickly. So the way that Arsenal are able to just kind of slowly move their lines up, Odegaard can start with the build up, and then at the same time get on the ball in the final third still. And he has a very good ball in the box to Kai Havertz, who back heels it to Saka, and Saka nearly scores. Probably goal of the weekend. This would have been at least a really nice team goal. And then he does get the goal he wanted minutes before. He had a good effort. It was saved by Areola. And here again, West Ham don't lay a glove on him. He has all the space into the box when he cuts in, and he picks out the near post with a great strike. I mean, Areola has no chance. It's another great ball picked up by Odegaard again. So Odegaard was way more. Arsenal's attack all of a sudden looks better when Odegaard's able to be inventive. Again, you're not asking Odegaard to be away, and so again, it could just be this game. We'll have to see. But the fixes, it forces teams to have to deal with, or has to have to ask other questions than just, oh, I need to stop Osaka, I need to stop Martinelli, I need to stop Odegaard, and I'm good, because that had been the formula that teams had kind of figured out. You couldn't do that this game because of what they were doing with everyone else. It was so Odegaard was able to sneak in, be way more inventive, and he creates a really good chance here, and Saka put it away, and then Declan Rice gets the sixth, and what a finish this was. And again, you talk about how the goal happens from the beginning. So Arsenal are starting off with a goal kick. Saliba has the ball. He's standing near Odegaard again, and you did see this. Odegaard was dropping deep to start possessions. But the theme of the game, again, is also no ball pressure. So this is really easy for anyone, let alone someone like Odegaard, to see a gap, pass it to Havertz. Havertz does well to get open, and then Havertz gets it, turns, plays it to Saka. Uh, and then Martinelli is kind of the lead striker in this moment, and Saka plays it to Martinelli into the box. Martinelli's made a run on the right side of the box, and he closed off, but he's able to still escape, and he passes back top of the box to basically. I put no one, but Trossard and Odegaard are kind of there. And I don't necessarily know if they kind of both messed up, or maybe they heard Havertz yell, "My ball," or "back away," and they do, and maybe it was leave. And Rice puts a postage stamp on the goalpost with a wonderful curling effort, probably 25 yards from distance, to just encapsulate his return to the London Stadium, and didn't leave on bad terms. You won them with a European trophy. So for the fans that did stay, they saw a spectacular goal scored by someone that they have cheered for the last 15 years, and so it was at their expense, but still. And so that is, I mean, I did spend a lot of time on the game, and I was expecting to, because because I what I saw was different. And so again, it'll be the questions I have is, will this be a consistent thing or not? I'm not even talking about them scoring 6 goals or having 25 shots and 12 on target. Normally they don't have more than 5 shots on target. That has been a problem. So is that a Gabriel Jesus effect? It's not necessarily Kai Havertz putting shots on target or scoring, but Havertz has started to make them better. And when I get to Arsenal, that is going to be a thing that I'm going to have to admit defeat. I've been trying to laugh at this move. I was trying to convince myself early on, and I just couldn't do it. Now I'm back in that corner. I think Arteta has discovered something. Now, can it be consistent is another thing. I mean, 3.59 XG, 25 shots, 12 on target. West Ham with 5 shots and only 1 on target, 0.22. Saka more centrally. I thought we were seeing him roaming a lot more. Martinelli as well. So this was different. 70% possessions. What you expect? 212 passes, 74%, 604, 646, and 84% for Arsenal. West Ham were just kind of sitting off. Those are the kind of numbers though you expect when maybe someone is playing down a man. This was not ideal. So to start off with Arsenal, it's funny because like Trossard's not really playing a false nine, and Havertz isn't really a midfielder, but they're not really nines. But what they are is they kind of recognize when one player has one role, to the other player needs to drop back and do the opposite, and they're switching off through the whole time. At least in this case, they weren't really got at defensively and with the possession. Teams had no West Ham had no idea. Players had no idea who to mark, where to go, where the runs were going, when Arsenal were going to sit, when Arsenal were going to be direct. And they used Martinelli and Saka to be their nines in the box to have that directness in their attack. This was very, very good. And again, I've spoken a lot about Trossard and Havertz, but it's Odegaard as well. Odegaard was having the easiest time he's had all season finding Trossard and Havertz for quick layoffs in and around the box to allow Odegaard to create again, because that has been a problem for him a little bit. He hasn't been able to not just score; he hasn't been able to create. He was very good at creating chances again, and Arsenal were creating situations that allowed Odegaard to receive the ball in central areas in the middle and final third with options ahead of him. And then with Trossard and Havertz, kind of spoke about it again, but I guess I'll double down a little bit. West Ham could not lay a glove on the spaces and pockets that Trossard was running into to be an outlet to receive the ball, either in the box or deeper. And I was wondering again how you could play Trossard without sacrificing Martinelli. And we've seen what Trossard through the middle, and it doesn't always work. He can't hold on to the ball. So we saw Arteta's vision play out because Trossard and Havertz were constantly floating and switching. And when Trossard was dropping into midfield, Havertz would stay forward and vice versa. And I've kind of alluded to it, but I guess I'll repeat myself. The problem I have now, I don't see how Gabriel Jesus gets into the starting 11, at least in big games, because I think you can't change this. I don't think Gabriel Jesus is able to do what Havertz did last week, playing as a false nine, forming that kind of box four shape, confusing Liverpool, and where the idea is just maintain control in the middle of the field with four, whether someone's playing in a double pivot where you outnumber them with 4-2, or someone's playing with a three-man midfield and you still outnumber them 4-3. I don't think Jesus can do that role. And in this case, when you need someone to finish your chances in the box, again, I don't really think Jesus can do that role either. I think he can be someone to give some minutes off the bench. I think Jesus can maybe come in and maybe give some minutes here and there to one of the forward players making a Martinelli or Saka making runs centrally now. But that are starting on the wing. We've seen Jesus play on the wing, and it wasn't terrible. We saw that I think versus for Spurs when Saka or Martinelli weren't able to play. But as far as starting a role centrally, either false nine or as a striker, I don't think he should play over Trossard. Now again, you have a lot of games. You're not always going to be able to play Trossard in every game, so there's some of that. But at least when everyone's fit and good to go, I think Jesus has a problem now. And then again, this is a way you can get Havertz to contribute without you needing his goals. So and last week it was Martinelli and Saka, so different people contributing. And a big thing was the Saka inside and central runs that were different. Martinelli with more freedom to roam as well. So again, this was something that Arteta discovered was different, and it was the ground that they did drop the 2-goal lead last year. So this was big mentally for them to be able uh, to because funny enough. It was exactly this time last year where they had Liverpool, and they had that Liverpool game at Anfield. This time it was at the Emirates, but it was same time they had Liverpool, and then they played West Ham away at a London stadium. So it's very funny how like the schedule worked again, and this could have been a scenario where this could have been hard for them. So it was good for Arteta to get them motivated. They weren't they were celebrating after the Liverpool game, but they didn't over celebrate. I know people were kind of trying to go with them a little bit for that. They were able to regroup, and they were as good as they've been all year, really. And again, really good way to use the roster that Arteta did. And The scenario I wanna float now is I personally can see a scenario where if they go on and win at the Etihad, if there is an if there, but if I think Liverpool are going to drop points somewhere. Either drawing City, drawing Brentford away. I'm worried about that game. They have Everton away still, not going to be easy. Villa away. I think the second to last week of the season. None of those games are going to be easy, and I don't think Liverpool are going to be perfect the rest of the way through. Arteta can maybe control their fate if they can beat City in that scenario. Because City would also, if City draw Liverpool, it would also require that. They're going to drop some points as well. Arsenal would control their fate. Is this team good enough to win out? If you're going to play this, if you're going to look this good, I think they are. They don't have to play City anymore. No. They have that City game, so everything will just rely on beating City, uh, and it will be at the Etihad. But at the same time, they've already beaten City. Now that was without Kevin De Bruyne, so there's always scenarios you can kind of just kind of play out. But I'm going to float that out there, and then with West Ham, yeah. Uh, it's one thing to play without the ball, it's and not apply any pressure, thinking you're fine. But once you concede on a set piece and then immediately give away a penalty later, you need to change, or it's going to get worse. And basically, they didn't lay a glove after that. They started okay for the first 10 minutes, and then it was just bad after that. And another thing too is if you're going to be bad defending set pieces, the more you sit off teams, the more possessions you're going to allow them to have, in your penalty area. Eventually, they're going to get bored and just cross stuff in and maybe have a shot, and the shot will deflect and go out of bounds, or a cross will go in and go out of bounds. So you're going to give up a lot of set pieces playing that way. Either Arsenal had 10 corner kicks, and it felt like they could have scored more. They could have scored 5 goals in just corner deliveries. So yeah, Emerson's not great. Calvin Phillips has been a problem for them too. They brought him to maybe get more out of Edson Alvarez and maybe get more out of Calvin Phillips, and he's a liability where he can't even get a start in this game. Thomas Suchek has been a problem for them too, and David Moyes maybe had the idea of bringing Calvin Phillips in to not necessarily play Suchek anymore because Suchek can't run anymore. He looks like he's got stilts on. Uh, Jared Bowen, not Jared Bowen, James Ward-Prowse and Alvarez wasn't enough security in that midfield, and you needed and Suchek wasn't really helping out either. Uh, that would have been a case where a Calvin Phillips ideally would have been better to use, but we've seen in the last 2 games he's had touch issues where he's just giving away the ball, and the ball that's led to them conceding. They that's how they conceded versus Bournemouth, and that's how Man United got the third goal too. So here's a game where he's fit. He should be good to go, and he can only come on when the game's 6-0 and the game's lost. So that hasn't worked out nearly as well as people would have wanted. When I heard the news, I was kind of excited to see it, but he's so rusty. It's a problem now, especially if you don't trust him until the game's just completely over and you just want to give him some touches, get him some game time. How long is it going to take him to get into game shape? That is a real issue. And then again, the roster limitations are one thing, but you had Cornet to play. I would have played him. We saw him do a really good job versus Sheffield, and you have Danny Ings, who can maybe come in, and he's not going to be great, but he can throw in the midfield and link up play. He can hold on to the ball better than Jared Bowen. You can play Bowen on his preferred left side, and you can maybe play Kudus on the right side. There were things to maybe try here that just what they did just was not good. Uh, and Zuma was poor. So yeah, there's a Moyes component to it, but it's also a player personnel a little bit. And yeah, there's scoreless for Brighton 0-0. They lost to Bristol City in the FA Cup. 2-2 to Sheffield. It's probably the last time they looked somewhat okay in a game, but it is Sheffield. 1-1 to Bournemouth. Bournemouth were the better team. They got lucky a little bit in that. Now it was Bournemouth got an early goal, and West Ham were able to get one back with a PK, but Bournemouth were all over them a little bit. And the 3-0 to Man United, where they played okay, but at the same you conceded 3 goals. And I think the reason why you played okay is because you were going against Harry Maguire. So there was a question to do. What do you do with David Moyes? And with everyone healthy, I think this team could even push a Europe spot, or they were pushing a Europe spot. But since they've lost Paqueta, they really have started to leak oil. So was it Moyes, or was it those players? Was it Paqueta and Kudus and Bowen? They haven't been able to get Bowen going. Bowen I think had 10 touches in the first half, and he's struggling to influence games since Boxing Day. And dinosaur tactics I think are one thing, but West Ham do deploy a very very older style of football that just relies on the other team messing up more than maybe your team controlling games. And I think in modern day, fans want their teams to be a little bit more on the front foot, to be a little bit more inventive. And I think I mentioned it maybe last week, or I have mentioned it before. I could have seen uh, maybe I think I predicted that West Ham would maybe move on from maybe Moyes around Christmas time because I thought they were going to be really struggling. So I was completely wrong on that. But I'm going to double down on what I said maybe on my first podcast. I see a scenario where they could maybe want to move on from Moyes and maybe look at Graham Potter. And I think, because Potter's been mentioned for Crystal Palace, because it looks like Roy Hodgson might be gone. Uh, but this is maybe a more of a stable situation. I think there are a lot of good pieces here that Potter could work on with. And I do think he's still a good manager, and it's still kind of the similar. It's not going to be like a Chelsea. It's still a similar step to where if he would have been managing Palace, still in London as well. I think that maybe makes a little bit more sense. And you've got a really good data team or the director side that has been pretty good at recruiting. His name is Tim Steichen. He built up that Leverkusen side that Xabi Alonso is enjoying right now, owning the Bundesliga. He found Alvarez and Kudus. Uh, don't know if he found Paqueta. Got James Ward-Prowse on a free. You mix. You have good scouting. At least it looks like. Maybe you can do a little bit something with that. So we'll have to see if that pans out. Uh, and moving on to Man City and Everton, I'm not going to spend nearly as much time on this game because let's be honest, it wasn't the best game for people that did wake up to watch it. They do go on to win 2-0. It takes until the second half. But Everton were just, it was always a case of, or Everton going to get a chance, or they going to take it. Man City are going to have 30 chances. Can they do anything with it? One thing I will say though is, Pep did what he does. I guess in February, he has this great game versus Brentford, and the reason why that game was so good is you had Foden as like a little bit of a 10. You had Kevin De Bruyne. Basically that was at the heart of maybe two of those goals, and you had Alvarez. It was so attack minded, and maybe Pep didn't like the idea of how how many chances that Brentford were actually able to get on the counter, and maybe he was worried a little bit with Everton being able to do that, and so we saw an entirely different lineup. We went from Foden 10, everyone talking about how Foden's the next great 10, to being pushed back on the wing again. He wasn't really able to impact the game much, and we saw Kevin De Bruyne back to being benched. We saw Bernardo Silva back to being benched. We didn't see fullbacks in the game. No Kyle Walker or Gvardiol to start. And but he went into this game with a very, very interesting lineup where it was Stones, Diaz, Ake, and Akanji. And then it was like Rodri. And, Rodri can sometimes kind of be creative, but it's four center backs when you have all the ball in kind of West Ham or Everton's area. None of those guys are really going to threaten, except on maybe some set pieces, and they actually did look threatening on set pieces even before Holland. Uh, but I think that kind of played a little bit into Everton's advantage, and Mateus Nunes just wasn't. This was maybe a game for him to somewhat shine a little bit, but I think he works a little bit better on the wing than necessarily through the middle. He was struggling to really get involved. I thought Foden was not enjoying having to be on the wing too. Really, the only player in that first half that was doing something was Jeremy Doku, and he was just enjoying himself versus Ben Godfrey. And unfortunately for Everton, Ben Godfrey was not good, and then he got hurt, and then you had to bring on Seamus Coleman, and then everything just kind of cratered a little bit with that. Everton went after they went down in goal. And what happens is, Man City get a corner kick in the 55th minute or something like that, and ball's whipped in. They weren't able to clear it properly, and it falls to Holland, and Holland just has a not fair strike. He just absolutely rips it into the net. That's how they get their first goal. I've forced Everton to change their game set a little bit, forced them to come out a little bit more, started to press a little bit more. And that's basically where the second goal comes from. They're trying to win the ball back finally. And you have Seamus Coleman that goes all the way up and he misses. And let's see what happens. Uh, I don't even have I don't even have the descriptions of what happens. Basically, Coleman and Young, maybe it's even Gaye, come out and they miss the ball. And what happens after that is Kevin De Bruyne gets the ball in the middle of the field, no one around him, and basically you have Holland, and Holland makes a really good run. He actually fools Braithwaite and Tarkowski, because he fakes like he's going to run basically, all the way through. Maybe he's going to run towards Kalkovsky, and he basically, he bends his run to run outside of Braithwaite, and De Bruyne plays in a perfect ball, and Braithwaite, unfortunately, gets to find out that it's like the EPL's version of Wembenyama. It's just Holland's bigger than Braithwaite, stronger than him, faster than him, and it's not really a contest. And basically, Holland just kind of brushes him off the ball. You feel bad for the kid because Braithwaite played a pretty good game outside of this, and it's not really his fault. Everyone Holland does this to almost any center back, really. But yeah, you finally got Everton to come out a little bit, come out of their shell because they're chasing the game, and that meant you had the press a little bit. Once you're able to get around the press, then the back line's a little bit exposed, and that's basically where the second goal comes from. And Holland does what he does. He has a really nice finish, a 1v1 finish, and that's basically what happened. So I thought. The interesting thing is the theme that I thought here is kind of similar to what I was thinking about first when I was watching the Brentford game is everyone is going to make all this talk about, oh, this is Phil Foden's team now. Even this is Holland's team. And I screwed up a little bit because on social media I made this post, and this before Holland got the 2 goals. It's Kevin De Bruyne's team still. And I think that's kind of the main thing because what he does is he'll recognize where the space is, and he's got such a good cross on him. You have to go out because he'll. Man City did not have any width in the beginning of this game. You didn't play with fullbacks because again, Pep was so worried about a Calvert-Lewin or someone, maybe a Dwight McNeil, making a run behind him. So you always had Stones, Ake, Akanji, and Diaz. I think to protect Diaz a little bit too. I think Pep kind of realizes Diaz is a little vulnerable now. But the idea was to make sure there's nothing that gets behind you at all. And there was maybe a couple of times where Everton had a look, but it was only really a look. Calvert-Lewin could not really hold on to the ball at all. That was kind of a problem too. A few times when Everton were able to somewhat win the ball back, they couldn't do a whole lot of diagonals. There was maybe a one time when I think Mikalenko was able to get in, and I think it forced Ederson to come out. Maybe he even got hurt a little bit. I thought Idrissa Gueye was playing well for them because you didn't really Rodri and Nunez didn't really have a lot of influence. When you look at Everton, but going back to my De Bruyne point, Doku is having to do all this on himself, and he's still doing a pretty good job versus Godfrey and Ashley Young, pretty much. But there's no overlap, and there's no one really running around. There's no movement. Everyone's just kind of just waiting for the ball essentially. Holland was not involved at all. And that's kind of another thing too. Kevin De Bruyne picks out Holland when other teams. Pep doesn't want this kind of the ball that they score that second goal on. That's usually a ball that Pep doesn't like because it is a risky pass. And when Holland makes that run, if he loses it, the counter is going to be on for the other team. It's gonna open up the game, and Pep doesn't want an open game. That's basically why he does all this stuff. But you also need to score, and Kevin De Bruyne, has that kind of. He doesn't really lose the ball that much. Sometimes he can. Versus Brentford, I think he crossed the ball in like 30 times. Well, it wasn't that much. It was like 15 times, and only 3 were actually found someone. But he makes those runs to open up things for others. Foden had all that fun, creative space because he was switching off with Kevin De Bruyne versus that Brentford game. And you have to respect when Kevin De Bruyne goes out wide. He's not like other players because he has that cross, he has that delivery that can screw you. He can, I think that was kind of that was a theme. I actually thought not having Gvardiol was actually kind of hurting them a little bit because lately he started to actually play somewhat okay for them. But that's pretty much it. That's all my thoughts on the game are. It was a classic case of when are Man City going to get their first goal when that forces Everton to change their mindset from their deep block because they basically went into this to try to get a 0-0 kind of or maybe get a corner kick and try to score off that. That was the kind of mindset they went into it. 19 shots, only 3 on target, only 2 big chances for City for all that possession. 73%, 700 passes, 92% accuracy. Everton had 5 shots and 1 on target. And so I think the tactics are kind of what I said. Another thing too is it was very strange how they had John Stones playing, and the idea really was to have Stones again worry about playing fullback. They had Akanji inverting, playing next to Rodri essentially. And Akanji, I thought was losing the ball in a few of those moments. And what's funny enough is I think Akanji is better out on the wing. I think we saw that for the Champions League final, where Akanji was actually playing out wide. Stones was almost like playing in midfield. So I was a little bit surprised about that, and the positive I guess was Doku was doing well. He had to do a lot of things on his own, and that is good that they at least have options because it looks like Jack Grealish got hurt in the Champions League yesterday. So the only thing I was thinking about is it was maybe a missed opportunity for Mateus Nunes, and then it's Kevin De Bruyne's team until otherwise, and Kevin De Bruyne had a really good goal in the Champions League yesterday. So here's their schedule though coming up. So they have a rematch with Chelsea. Chelsea did get a point versus them back in November. It was that crazy 4-4 game, if you guys remember. Their March schedule though is they have someone. I think it's like Bournemouth. After that, they thumped Bournemouth 6-0, and maybe Bournemouth will remember that too. It could be at the Etihad though. But then it's the Manchester derby. And then after that, maybe there's a Champions League game, and then it's Liverpool, and then it's Brighton, Arsenal, and Villa all in a row. And they lost to Villa in the first meeting. They lost to Arsenal. They drew Liverpool, and Brighton in between that isn't going to be necessarily easy either. That when they played earlier in September, that was a pretty hard 2-1 game from what I remember. Now that was when Brighton were somewhat a little bit more healthy, but still, it's not gonna be if they go through that, they will win the title. But that isn't the easiest March schedule to not drop points somewhere. So that is because you have Champions League in between as well, and you saw some injuries a little bit yesterday. Foden was a little gimpy. It looks like. Uh, you are just getting Kevin De Bruyne back, and it looks like Pep was trying to baby his minutes a little bit. Maybe that's why he didn't play versus the first half versus Everton. Um, so we'll have to see. It's a typical Man City performance though in the month of February. It is kind of what they do. They win ugly, but they win. Squad rotation played a role in that, but Holland is back for them. Holland just even when he's not influencing any of the game at all, he maybe had 15 touches the entire game. He maybe had 7 touches at halftime, but he gets a lookout goal. He almost always like puts it in. It's just really annoying. It's not really fair. And he wasn't really able to impact the game yesterday, but at the same time, you always have defenders worried about him. So that just opens up, stuff for others. And with Everton, the main thing that's with them is they're missing Decoy. A lot of their bad form has been with them missing him. It takes some of the pressure off Calvert-Lewin or even a Beto. Because other than that, it's only just Calvert-Lewin. Just the ball goes long for him, and he's trying desperately to hold on to the ball. If Decore is able to play, Calvert-Lewin can, instead of trying to hold on to the ball, he can maybe try to head something forward, and Decore can make some runs off him. Everton are a different team with when Decore plays versus when he can't, and he's dealing. I think with I thought it was African Cup of Nations. Apparently, he's dealing with a hamstring injury. So I don't know when they get him back. That is a problem because Everton are not out of this relegation fight. Whether or not they get points, back or not, they're not playing good enough to win games. Now maybe they can escape by getting some draws here and there and getting help elsewhere from other teams screwing up. But Everton are not in a good run of form right now after what looked like they had maybe fixed things up back in November and December. Everything is flipped again. So not great. I mean, they didn't play terrible. They did a pretty good job to. I thought Idrissa and Gaye did a decent job at clogging up the midfield. Again, Foden, Nunez, and Alvarez were quite quiet. Uh, Rodri as well, but it's another poor Calvert Lewin game. He doesn't really seem to be offering much. He couldn't hold on to the ball to save his life. And the second they opened themselves up, they conceded. So that's not good either. In the second, when Seamus Coleman had to come on for Godfrey, that wasn't great either. Now they have maybe Patterson to come back. He's maybe injured, but this wasn't great for them. And then the game I'll move on to next is Liverpool and Burnley. And Liverpool do go on to win 3-1. It didn't feel like a 3-1 kind of game. It actually felt like a 3-3 kind of game, and this game gave me some heartburn, unfortunately. Uh, I was, you're wondering how they were going to respond to that Arsenal defeat, and I think they're still having some lineup issues, and so one thing that like broke out like a couple of days before the game was there's like a flu going around in the Liverpool camp, and so Allison was sick, so we had to see Callum Kelleher, who actually had a pretty good game, which was good because the few times that Kelleher has played, he has not necessarily played well, and I have a feeling he's actually Kelleher is going to play in the Carabao final, so it was good for him to actually play get a full game in and to play well because he had to make some big saves. Uh, Gomez was not able to play because he had a full flu, and then Bradley still is away because of dealing with his family situation. Uh, but Sloboslai still isn't able to go. And so what was Klopp going to do about that RCM spot? Was it going to be Gravenberch again? Because that did not work for Arsenal. And I think we maybe got an answer in the second half. But it started off with Endo being back. So it was Endo, Alexis, and then Curtis Jones. And Trent Alexander-Arnold was tried at right back. Robertson was back at left back. And the front line was kind of what we've seen. It was Jota, Nunez, and Diaz. And the one thing I was thinking about was I was surprised we didn't see Gakpo because back in Boxing Day, Liverpool beat Burnley. I think it was 2-0. It was actually that was kind of a helter-skelter kind of game as well. But Liverpool had like 3 or 4 big chances that they screwed up on. Jota had to come on in the second half, and Jota basically won the game for them at the very end. Nunez scored a really good goal in that game too. But it was also that the combination between Nunez and Gakpo destroyed Burnley going back in Boxing Day. And I was a bit surprised that we saw Diaz instead. And in that first half, I was kind of cursing Diaz a little bit, and I was glad to eat my words a little bit. Just it seems he's sometimes hesitant to just really take someone on. He's so clever at turning and making runs into the box, but when he gets the ball into the box, sometimes it feels like he's hesitant. And in the second half, the opposite happened. Actually, he was fantastic with the goal that he scored. So. Uh, the first goal was Jota from a corner kick. Like I mentioned, all three needed a corner kick to get that first goal, and then Burnley got a corner kick with O'Shea in basically the 45th minute. So 1-1 at halftime, and I was a little bit worried coming into this because in between that. Probably the biggest chance in the game came from Burnley, where Fofana, it wasn't Fofana, where Amdouni was able to get behind Virgil van Dijk, and it forced a very brave save by Kelleher to go to ground and to stop that 1v1 in the box because he turned he had a touch it came from a throw in, and he had a touch to get around Van Dijk, and Kelleher came out and was big and great there, and I was a little bit worried. And in the second half, it was only worse because Fofana had 2 really big chances coming at the expense of some poor defending. Burnley started to go long, and it's Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa kind of messes up. He's trying to head the ball. Maybe it takes like a weird bounce. He allows it to bounce, which isn't great. And the ball just kind of bounces in front of him, and then it hits off his head like really quickly in succession. And Fofana is able to quickly run in behind, and it forces a Kelleher to come out, and he stops that 1v1. If he lifts it, that's a goal. Uh, and then Odegaard wasn't able to get the second one or get the rebound. And then there was another one when they went long, and I think Kwanzaa tries to head the ball and he loses it. Elliott has since come on in the second half, and he misses he loses a heading duel, and some Burnley player heads it over everyone. And again, Fofana is able to run onto a loose ball. And again, Kelleher comes out and does a good job to make the angle big, but at the same time, there is a chance to maybe either lift it or try to curl it around him. And Fofana goes for the curler and doesn't get enough bend on it and misses it wide. But Burnley had their moments, which is scary enough. And going into this, it was part of me was wondering, with Sloboslai being out, what is Klopp going to be able to do about that RCM spot? And in this case, it got worse because you would wonder, maybe Trent could maybe try to, be there now that you have Gomez. When Gomez wasn't able to play because of the flu, and no Bradley as well. And then lo and behold, at halftime, you hear that Trent Alexander-Arnold had to come off, and now it looks like he did something to his knee again, and that's really frustrating too. It is kind of unfair because I was emotional after the Liverpool Arsenal game last week, and I was going at Trent Alexander-Arnold, and I'm thinking, man, this wasn't really the game to play him. And I think it's worth saying he has tried to rush from recovery. He probably wasn't going to play because of Bradley. And then another thing too is he got hurt versus Arsenal in that FA Cup game when he was maybe the player of the game. So it was unfair to kind of go at him a little bit last week. There needed to be, kind of there needed to be that thinking included as well. That context included as well. So uh, the so you're missing Slopshlai, no Trent Alexander-Arnold, no Salah. So again, that right side is still. What do you do with that right side? And in the second half, we got an answer. Klopp did something crazy genius. Again, that has been a theme. Maybe it didn't work out versus Arsenal, but he turned that around because he did something that this is something that like I don't know, a FIFA manager would maybe do, but just you wouldn't think this would work essentially because in that second half it was Curtis Jones playing right back, and he was basically kind of intermixing between him and Harvey Elliott, and it worked out spectacularly. And basically, that's the change that helped Liverpool win the game. So it was bringing Elliott on to be. I guess he took off Trent Alexander-Arnold, and it was Harvey Elliott to come on, and then they shifted Curtis Jones over. And man, that was such a good move. It moved Endo a little bit out wide, and it was Alexis McAllister back in kind of the middle, but they were kind of doing a pivot, and they just kind of shifted everyone over a little bit, and because he had Curtis Jones that started off being like the left mid, and he was playing right back in the second half. And that's first you have Burnley have someone like Odeber, who is quite good in 1v1s, and they couldn't lay a glove on him. Curtis Jones was fantastic defending there, and Harvey Elliott was doing great work to come back and to double up in those spots. And the other thing to say is Harvey Elliott when he came on, was spectacular at being an outlet, getting the ball quickly turning and threading passes through lines. And that fix changed that entire second half. Liverpool get the goals because of being able to make some finishes in the final third in the Burnley box. There was also a brilliant header by Darwin Núñez sent in by Elliott that needs to be talked about. But is also, the 2 goals come from Elliott, making a run into the box and also getting the delivery right. So this game did not feel safe at all, but at the same time, similar to, like Pep and, maybe Arsenal earlier in the season, win, just win, baby, win, and they were able to win, and maybe when they were at their best. So the first goal comes from Diego Jota. It's just a corner kick again in the 30th minute. Alexander Arnold, beforehand, has made a run up the wing, and it's very interesting too because the way the game started, you didn't see Alexander Arnold playing through the middle like we had seen before. He was basically back to being a touchline, basically bombing fullback again. And he has he makes a good run, not really picked up, and he has a really nice ball sent in, trying to pick out Jota on a cross. It's blocked, goes out of bounds, and then Arnold has the corner delivery that basically finds Jota all alone to head the ball into the empty net where Trafford was fooled. And with this, it was kind of special too because Alexander Arnold became the number one guy in the EPL for assists for a defender, passing number two, who was his opposite fullback in Andy Robertson. So I mean, that's going to be a part of Klopp's legacy. The top two defenders for assists are the two Liverpool fullbacks. And Alexander Arnold's only 25, which is it is just mad he was able to already reach that. Robinson can maybe pass him, but he's a little bit older. I think he's close to turning 29. So Alexander Arnold, as long as he stays in the league, that's probably going to be his record for a very long time. And then there was a chance for Liverpool, I think, in the 37th minute. So I'll touch about this. Nunez crossed to Jota. Again, it starts with Alexander Arnold getting the ball in the touchline. He has a really great pass to find Nunez, bending his round in behind. Nunez tries a square ball to Luis Diaz, but it's blocked at the last minute by Trafford. So it's a Nunez cross to Diaz, not Jota. But it is a good instinct and run by Diaz here. And again, I just feel like sometimes it's not really that threatening, not enough for me. So again, first half reaction, I was worried about this. I was wondering why Gakpo wasn't starting. If nothing else, bully people into the box. You can play dinosaur football. We saw basically the Netherlands do this versus Argentina to get back into the game. He brought Wout Weghorst on to basically bully people into the box, just out physical teams, and sometimes that works. Gakpo is such a mismatch into the air. Him and Nunez together. I want to see that more, and just it's surprising that we haven't yet. But Diaz, shut me up. Diaz had a really good second half. Uh, but another thing too is so the front three wasn't really working that great. Another thing was the midfield was kind of stagnant. It wasn't really working. It was Indo's game's first back, but both him and McAllister were. It didn't feel like the chemistry was necessarily there. And I thought in the second half, McAllister and Indo were kind of closer together, and it was they both were doing better to make the ball move a little bit better. Another thing too was we saw Elliott, dropping into pockets, and Liverpool was significantly more fluid in that second half. So again, second half starts. Harvey Elliott Klopp brings on Harvey Elliott for Alexander Arnold, and then basically, who is going to play right back and insert Curtis Jones, my man of the match for right back because of what happens. And they get the goal in the going ahead goal in the 54th minute. So Elliott's sub works out well here. And one thing to talk about is it starts with basically Liverpool pressing Burnley into a mistake. So Nunez first sprints to Trafford to get the ball off him. Ball goes to the left back. Elliott immediately runs onto him. Elliott forces the clearance. Curtis Jones reads it, and from there, Liverpool are in. Jones then plays it to Jota. Jota one times it to Burnley's Jacob Ramsey, not a Liverpool player, but McAllister engages, wins the ball back. Kind of did it, though fouling. I'm not gonna lie. I was a little bit worried when they were starting to look at that, but it's not called, and VAR upheld it. And then Endo wins the ball back, and then loosely finds Harvey Elliott, who makes he's free into the box. And he makes the right decision to try to play it to Luis Diaz. Maybe even gets a little lucky. Maybe the cross goes through someone's legs, but Luis Diaz makes a run near post. Nunez has at this point tried to go run back post, and Luis Diaz has run in front of everyone. And it's brilliant, brave header because he's basically diving himself kind of near the post, but he's able to head it in, and good to see. Luis Diaz has been pretty big in these moments when they've missed Salah. It's been Luis Diaz, it's been Jota, it's been Nunez in moments, and that's kind of what you've needed the front three to do. It's taken a while for them to. You haven't seen a game where all three have clicked, but there have been games where Liverpool have been able to continue this winning form. The Arsenal not included, by getting contributions from each separately in key moments. And Luis Diaz has also got the lone goal versus Arsenal last week. Regardless of whether or not it was kind of fluky, it was his kind of desire his desire to stick with the game. And that's another thing too. Last week versus Arsenal, Nunez wasn't really able to go, and Gakpo through the middle to me doesn't work. And I don't really think Jota necessarily works through the middle either. You're not really having someone that can hold on to the ball and that can scare center backs as much as Nunez does. If Salah can't play, because Salah's really good at doing that too, regardless of his size. Nunez is really the only other one in the front line that can be an outlet over the top to stretch back lines a little bit. And we saw Nunez back, and lo and behold, Liverpool played better with Nunez back. And here's a good example of that. So in the 66th minute, Robertson has a really good ball to Nunez, and it's a goal kick. Endo gets the ball, and Burnley are playing kind of narrow because Diaz is making a clever run centrally. So the center back is worried about Diaz, and so that drags the Burnley right back over to worry about that. And Robinson just has the wing to himself, and Endo plays him a great ball to Robinson, and Robinson bombing forward, and Robinson has a really good cross with his left foot, and he puts it on a platter for Nunez, and Nunez does everything right here. He's just unlucky. I think his flick is too straight to Trafford, but it was pretty good. And then you have the two Burnley chances with Fofana, and at the same time, Keller was able to keep them in the game, and then it was still a 1-0 game at this point. And then Liverpool had a breakaway, 3v2 breakaway. Nunez makes a great run alongside Diaz, and he looks like the ball is simple to split. To get him the ball into the box, and he kind of waits. Diaz waits too long, and he plays it to Jota instead, and the chance goes away. So at this point, I was worried. Was that moment going to cost them? And Kwanzaa had a near worldly. Maybe he had a mistake a little bit for the earlier Fofana chance, but he nearly owned up to it here with a great worldie. I think it's Van Dijk that wins a header off a corner kick, and then Kwanzaa has a worldie. And then there's a chance with Elliott, and he has a cross that's trying to maybe find Nunez, but I think it takes a deflection. But this starts with Elliott in the center of the field. So this is what I mean. It was like a makeshift six at this point, and he plays a fantastic line splitting pass to find McAllister ahead. So you have the two Burnley, defenders. They're making sure Elliott's not going to pass him, but there's a little there's a little lane to to slip a ball to McAllister, who's I guess 8 yards behind them. And McAllister gets it and turns, and that's how you break lines. And then McAllister then finds Jones making a pretty good run upfield from the right back position that has gone unmarked. Nothing comes from the chance, but they do get a corner kick out of it, and lo and behold, they score on the corner kick. And the first ball is defended, but Jota tries a shot across. It's blocked first, but Elliott gets onto it. And then he just whips in a really good cross with his left foot, floats it perfectly into the box. He's able to lift it over the first defender. And Nunez does amazing here to adjust his body because the ball's behind him, but he's able to jump backwards and still get enough power to get this on goal. And really good goal by Nunez. And the note I had here is he makes the easy look hard, or the very, very, very hard. Or he makes the easy look hard, but the very hard. That's the note. Look very easy. And that probably is a good way to describe Nunez because sometimes when he has a lot of time to himself, and maybe it looks like a simple chance, he kind of screws it up. He flubs himself. But in those moments when he has to react quickly, those I'm thinking back to those 2 goals he scored versus Newcastle. It's just put his laces through it and just hit it. Hope that it's on target or not. And he can't score those kind of goals. And this is a likewise a similar kind of freakish goal that really only probably someone like him would have scored. So. Yeah, I mean, the thoughts are, it was 1-1 at halftime. I was a little worried, but again, good Klopp adjustment and risk and gamble in the second half. It worked, playing Jones and Elliott the way he did. 25 shots and 10 on target, 9 shots in the first half, 16 in the second half. The Alexo Indo switch, the double pivot, I think worked out well as well. Curtis Jones wasn't, he was playing right back, but he wasn't really doing these like bombing things. It was really Elliott that was taking up the wing, and Curtis Jones was almost playing like a makeshift. It was almost like a midfielder. You had Kwanzaa kind of spread out a little bit too. Endo was maybe dropping deeper, and you had Curtis Jones and kind of Alexis a little bit like that. So they shifted everything around a little bit to make this work. Maybe against someone else, this wouldn't necessarily work out as well. But at least here, because again, Odegaard is a pretty good winger that Burnley have, and they were able to somewhat quiet him. Burnley did have 9 shots and 4 on target, 4 big chances for Burnley though. So I mean, this game could have ended 4-4. To be honest, 71%. That's what you expect. 581 passes, 87%. So the general thoughts were it was almost like a 4-2-4 from Klopp. I think that'd be kind of a way to because he was playing a pivot. And they back to using fullbacks out wide again. None of this inverted stuff, at least in the first half with Alexander-Arnold and Robertson. But they weren't really that great in the first half. They were much better in the second half. And again, Curtis Jones was standout performance. Elliott as well. Elliott was finding pockets unmarked and was threading some really nice passes into fine feet and to get that delivery right in the second half, leading to those 2 goals. Luis Diaz coming in clutch. Diego Jota likewise. He gets the first goal with the corner kick. And the only negative is a couple of mishaps from Kwanzaa, but Calio was able to bail him out. Kwanzaa had to play because Konate was red carded versus Arsenal, and Alexander didn't look right. And it's come out that he's not going to be able to make the Carabao final now. And so you do it, Bradley. Will Bradley be able to return? Get his mind right and return. Back to training. You probably have to train a week before the game, or will Gomez be able to get back to recover from the flu? We'll have to see. But that is otherwise it might have to be Curtis Jones playing versus Chelsea. But a couple of weeks before we go to that, so still time for either the other options to change. But that is a big blow. I mean, not to just say losing Trent Alexander-Arnold is a big blow, but just the way, other than Salah, he's been as important of a player as anyone this season. Not an exaggeration. I think before January, I think I had him as a top 3 player in the league for player of the season because of the impact that he had Liverpool weren't able don't get to where they are in the table without the way that Alexander Arnold was performing, and basically almost shape shifting how he was playing the position, how he was playing fullback, playing in midfield, how just kind of just doing whatever Klopp was asking him to do, being the makeshift do it all kind of player in the first half. So not having him is monumental, and but we'll have to. I mean, Conor Bradley was also player of the match versus Chelsea just a couple of weeks ago in the league game. So it is worth kind of saying that if maybe he's not able to go, but Gomez has been able to do a job at right back as well. But there are some questions to ask there or to that need answering. Uh, but I'll move on to Burnley. Uh, it is kind of a you do have to feel a little bit for company because they are maybe starting to look a little bit better. I think they've done a really good job to bring in this Fofana guy. Now there are two ways to look at this. You can be Fofana's got to bury those chances, or he did well to create them. I kind of I guess it's my Nunez kind of take a little bit there. So there could be some of that. They're not defending corner kicks that great. That's kind of unfortunate for them because they're going to concede a lot of corner kicks. Yeah, they have, but that said, mistakes from Kwanzaa. They're not going against Konate, and no right back for Liverpool in as I have, and they weren't really able to create enough danger moments. They had the two for Fofana, but not much after that. So still a work in progress. I think the thing with them is it is a project, and so what does the ownership do? Do they can they maybe think about it this long term where they can keep their core, they can repeat and what Leicester's doing because Leicester didn't really move on. They didn't, Leicester did sold a couple players, but they kept their core. They kept someone like Dewsbury Hall, they kept Vardy, they kept Iheanacho, and it looks like they're going to be able to quickly turn around and come back to the league. So it can that be Burnley's kind of mindset, or are they going to ship company and just kind of start it all up again? They do have a lot of young decent pieces. M Dooney, Odeberg, when Koleosho returns, maybe him. It looks like Fofana is alone. Maybe you can try to convince Chelsea to keep him there. There could be some pieces to work with. James Trafford is, I think, the youngest keeper in the league. Uh, maybe you're in a situation where you've got players that can do stuff that aren't necessarily going to be poached. You imagine we'd have to. I don't. Maybe Sanderberg could. Someone would try to look for him. But that is pretty much it. So it's possible they can keep their core, and it seems like that's kind of the secret sauce to being able to quickly rebound. I think Leeds have lost a lot of players, but Leeds are in a decent shape to me at least make the playoffs. Maybe Southampton are starting to get on a run as well, and Southampton for the most part kept their core. So I think that's kind of key when you do go down, where you don't necessarily lose everyone. Uh, and then I'll move on to Man United and Aston Villa. Man United do go on to win 2-1. See how we're doing for time. I'll probably have to speed up a little bit. Yeah, I've got to speed up a lot. With Hoyland and then Douglas Luiz and then Scott McTominay. And with Villa, how were they going to follow up their 5-0 Fun Fest versus Sheffield? But they did that playing uncharacteristically bad versus Chelsea in the FA Cup rematch. I think it was Barbara Kumar's worst game he's played in a real long time. Little uncharacteristic from him and Aston Villa. And so one thing I was wondering is there was no Torres. At least he is on the bench now. There's no Emre Konsa, and it looks like Konsa was a big miss for Chelsea, and he wasn't able to play versus Man United. It was Matty Cash instead. I think Man United enjoyed that. I think they went a little bit at Cash's expense, and they lost Emre Konsa. This is kind of unfortunate too by trying to maybe chase a goal differential for Sheffield last week, and Konsa is trying to score, and he flies into the goalpost and basically messes up his knee. And I don't know how long he's going to be out, but that is looking a massive miss. They already without Tyrone Mings. Now you lose Konza. You haven't been with Paul Torres. Someone like a Langley isn't like for like. And I think there's been some of that. The Aston Villa have been a bit on a bit of a rough patch since they beat Man City and Arsenal. Really, it actually goes back to when they played Man United, when they had that 2-goal lead, and then they shipped 3 at halftime. And since then, both the clubs have kind of shifted form a little bit. Now, Man United turned around and lost to Aston Villa like the week after that, but that was a big game for both these teams because for Man United's sake, that was when Rasmus Højlund got his first goal, his first league goal. And since then, man, has he been on fire? Scored another goal here. And what's funny enough is they're not looking for him at all. He's just getting scraps, and he's making meat out of these scraps. So when you actually do start to create at a high clip for him, is he going to be a monster? It's looking that could be a possibility. Maybe not necessarily this season, but going forward, that has to excite me if I'm a Man United fan because you're starting to see his conversion rate is insane. It's like 60% over the last 6 games. You're not. He's only getting like 2 or 3 shots a game, and he's still doing this. There's a stat that I saw where Ollie Watkins and Aston Villa and Man United are playing the same kind of position, same kind of shape. Ollie Watkins had 45 touches. Rasmus Højlund had like 22. So it's just that is you're still not really playing through him. When you do, does that change a lot? And then with Man United, the everything was good versus West Ham, but they did have that injury news with Lisandro Martinez, and it does look like the worst fears have panned out. They're going to be without him for a little bit, and so lo and behold, we get Harry Maguire back. So you had to force Rathfield Varane back into the 11. It was weird to see Maguire play over him last week, and we saw Maguire play again this week. And I think Aston Villa had fun going against him again. And really, I think the theme of the game was Aston Villa not taking their chances at all, either in the first half or the second half. Really, I thought Leon Bailey was having fun going down that wing, going a little bit at Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw had to go off, and then it was Lindelof, and he was having fun going at Lindelof, and then Emery Martinez had to, or Unai Emery took off Leon Bailey to bring on Musa Diaby. I think that kind of killed their momentum a little bit. In the first half, it was Jacob Ramsey just making some runs into channels that he wasn't really been able to fall in, or he wasn't able to be marked, and he was getting into good spots. And I thought again, Aston Villa were quite good in everything. They're good in chance creation, good in everything, but the final product that really was lacking. Uh, I thought they got the better of Man United. Really, Mano had too much to cover. Alex Moreno was making runs down the wing. That was forcing Dallo to cover that. Garnacho wasn't doing the best to help out, and then Mano had to make a decision whether it was John McGinn or Ramsey, and it was really 2-on-1 in that situation a lot. And you saw Aston Villa really enjoy a lot of their football down that side. I'm not necessarily going to get into the goals or whatnot. Uh, I think it is a similar game though that Man United had played all year. They start off hot, but they really cooled off in the second half. They sat deep, allowed pressure to play it off the counter, and they needed a hero to bail them out, and they get it again. So I mentioned how the two subs that happened in the game. One was taking off Leon Bailey for Aston Villa, and two, it was taking off Luke Shaw, which Ten Hag had to do in the beginning, but it was also bringing on McTominay in the second half. And when I get to Man United, the funny thing about him is it's very clear now that he's just been misprofiled. He's almost like Jude Bellingham. He's not a midfielder to help with build up to be a defensive guy to win the ball back. He's a second striker essentially, and we've seen this now for him a lot. Really, another thing too that's worth saying is Mano does well to win the ball back, and he gets the pass. He turns. He finds Diego Dallo the ball. So Mano makes a pretty good run. Varane plays a really nice ball to him, and then Mano does a cutback ball to Dallo. But there's a lot to do, and Dallo hits his first time cross into the box, and he somehow just finds McTominay's head, and it's Brentford-esque. McTominay has come in and just kind of been hero in moments, but it's a fantastic cross by Dallo, who didn't necessarily have the best defensive game, but he was great again on the ball. And I mean, it was kind of amazing. We only had 3 goals in this game. So I mean, the shots Aston Villa had 23 shots and 10 on target. Man United 17 and 5. Onana had to make 8 saves. Onana had a pretty good game. Not just a pretty good game, a really good game. And I think I had a lot of notes about that. Basically, maybe I'll get to it later on. That Onana has almost become like Man United's like Darwin Núñez, or like the Darwin Núñez of keepers, essentially, where He's actually had a lot of good performances this year. It's just his uh-ohs, his mess ups have been really highlighted, maybe grossly highlighted, but it's also come in kind of key moments. But you're starting to maybe see a little consistency too. And so, I mean, this was a fantastic. There were a couple times when it just seemed how is Aston Villa going to be able to score at all? Now, a lot of these were kind of closely hit to him, but he's doing really well to react, and he's showing. Yeah, Liverpool. He was like this for Liverpool too, and it was just it was crazy because he made two amazing saves on the before Aston Villa score on the corner kick. It seemed like surely Aston Villa were going to score because I think John McGinn has just something point blank, and Onana is just big and is able to defend that. And then eventually, I think Moussa Diaby goes onto a loose ball. He's trying to cross or a shot, and it deflects. And then Douglas Luiz is able to get the deflection to go in. Funny enough, Douglas Luiz like did a shimmy in front of either Onana or in front of Rafael Varane. That was maybe too early because it was only a 1-1 kind of game at that point, and Man United kind of responded a little bit after that, so that was kind of funny. Uh, Aston Villa with 56% of the ball, Man United 44, Aston Villa 427 passes, 87%, Man United 312, 80%. And that is kind of that when you think of Man United, that is them. You know, 80% accuracy, 300 passes completed. That's really low for a team that Man United is trying to be looked at chasing City, Arsenal, Liverpool. Uh, those three clubs at a minimum are usually over 500 passes every single game week. Sometimes it's over 600. Sometimes it's over 700. Brighton can do that. You're getting outpassed by Aston Villa. You're getting outpassed by a lot of teams here. That kind of passing number is something that Nottingham Forest could do. So that is where Man United still have to kind of figure something out a little bit. Maybe it's not necessarily working uh, with their midfield, but the back line also has to play 20 yards deeper. I think when Maguire plays, it's back-to-back games. They've allowed 20 plus shots on their goal, 10 on target this game. Onana saved them, and again, I think Harry Maguire was a big reason why he needed to save them. I thought they were just having fun with that. Uh, Harry Maguire is not really the best companion for Rafael Varane. Like immediately you see Lisandro Martinez having to come out, and you saw last week you saw Maguire playing instead of Varane, and just once again, Man United are having to defend against 20 shots on their goal. So I don't think that's a coincidence. And then with Rasmus, yeah, 22 touches versus 45 for Ollie Watkins. And then McTominay playing as a second striker, and again, maybe he doesn't have the passing vision or the touch, but what he does have is a good ability to drive the ball. He makes good runs into the box, and he can be a target man and finish. And I mentioned what I said with Onana, and I think another thing that's worth saying is uh, maybe he makes unconventional saves. Maybe it's uncomfortable, but De Gea starting out wasn't always appreciated too. And I think what's funny enough is it is his saves now that are saving them the game. Um, and the reason why I say that is it's his saves is he's turned out to be pretty poor on the ball. He had a number of horrid decisions in this case where there was one who he kicked it right to John McGinn and then had to make a really good save to get the ball from going out. So that's funny how that's all kind of come full circle. I do think Man United sometimes their in front three can be too selfish, and in this case, funny enough, maybe it was too unselfish. A couple of times when Rashford was trying to look the ball to get to Garnacho, or maybe they were looking to get the ball to Hoyland when they maybe actually could have gone themselves. But on the flip side, I actually think that shows improvement. That at least they recognize they can't be just that selfish. It wasn't happening every time. They were still trying to be heroes themselves. But I thought they were doing a pretty good job, at least in that respect. I thought it was interesting though to see Rashford. It was Rashford to come off for Scott McTominay. It wasn't Kobe Mino, so maybe Eric Ten Hag has learned a little bit. And the other thing too is so you lost Lisandro Martinez last week. You had to lose Luke Shaw at halftime here, so the back line is starting to be bad again. Is that going to affect them now? Because hook or crook, they're starting to get into form again, at least points wise. But is this too good to be true? Winning can breed confidence, but at the same time, uh, how sustainable is this? One thing that maybe looks sustainable is Rasmus. Rasmus is on fire right now, and defensively, obviously questions. I can't imagine. I can't understand why Maguire keeps getting played. Uh, Funny enough, he actually is responsible maybe for the opening goal because he has he wins the header to actually help Rasmus get that goal because it comes off a corner kick or a free kick. But that said, it is he every time his first thought is to run backwards. He is so afraid to engage. Good on the ball. You can't say that he's not necessarily terrible when in possession, but I think when you have a defender that's just running backwards and playing so much further away than your defensive midfielders, and those lines are just getting more and more apart, teams can enjoy that. And speaking of Aston Villa, they enjoyed everything but the finishing. So it's the second time where they've had to do that. Two back-to-back times where they've had poor results, and I am going to look at one. It was changing Liam Bailey out, so maybe it wasn't the best there. I think it's kind of unfortunate that they had to go into this without Konsa because I think Man United to target Matty Cash with with Rashford, and then McTominay basically scores on Matty Cash. It's him that he beats in the air, uh, and I think there's a speed bump here because 3 games in a row that they've now lost at home they almost went a year not losing at home. So it's first it was Newcastle, and then it was Chelsea in the FA Cup game, and now Man United. And I do think the injuries are affecting them. And that's just Konza. They've been different since they've been missing Paul Torres. Paul Torres maybe offers them a little bit something unique on the ball that they've been missing because I think you're starting to see Watkins struggle a little bit to get involved. And another thing too is it's been a bit disappointing or surprising that Musa Diaby hasn't really kicked on for them like I would have thought. Uh, he came in or he started off pretty well for them, but when Liam Bailey came off, it looks like they moved Liam. I guess Musa Diaby. They started him on the wing, and then they moved him kind of centrally, and they moved McGinn to actually be on the wing, and just everything stagnated after that point. And there've been games when Musa Diaby has tried to play next to Watkins, and those have been the games when everything has been stagnant, like Newcastle, and everything changed when Liam Bailey came on. Like Liam Bailey has been as important of their attacking core as Ollie Watkins for the last month and a half. And so that is a little unfortunate because I really thought he was going to kick on, but still time maybe for him too. It is worth saying that you usually don't see that you when people make a move to a different league, different country. It takes a while. It takes a year for them to really get comfortable where they are at. He hasn't always been a consistent starter in the lineup as well, and that could be factoring in as well. And then moving on to Tottenham and Brighton. Tottenham to go on to win 2-1. Watch this. I had to watch this game live because I was watching it with my brother and his wife and big Spurs fans and or at least she is. He likes Arsenal. And it was during the Liverpool game, so I was trying to watch that on my phone while I had this one on the TV. But this was a good game as well. It started off not good for Tottenham because Gross gets one early with a PK. I think it's Mickey Van de Ven who actually gets caught with his hand in the cookie jar. I think he brings on Welbeck, and then Gross is able to finish. And the first half, it was all Brighton, to be honest. Welbeck was getting into some really good areas, and Vicario had to make a number of really big saves. So it was kind of surprising a little bit with that. And one thing to say is this game had a lot of spice last spring as well. And funny, I mentioned my brother. My brother and his wife were in London this time around. Maybe it was April last year, and they saw this game live. And it was this game. And funny enough is so how much has changed in a year. Because it wasn't Conte. I think it was Conte's assistant, but De Zerbi basically got him sent off. Funny enough, but it was also Harry Kane that got the winner last season. It was kind of late too. It was I think Brighton were trying to play from the back, and I think it was maybe it was Alexis or it was Caicedo who had a misplayed a ball, and I think it was Kulusevski able to do the counter, and then it's a square ball to Kane, and Kane had a really good finish. But just a year now, they don't have Kane, and basically it kind of the how much things change, you can still sometimes things can stay the same, and Brighton kind of lose in a similar manner, unfortunately for them. And Brighton were off their great Palace win, so how were they going to combine that? And they weren't necessarily bad. They were fantastic in the first half, and they got Matoma back, so they got some good lineup news. But they had to lose Yao Pedro, so that kind of factored in as well. And one of the reasons why they were so good versus Crystal Palace, Palace were bad, But it was Lamptey playing really well at left back. And what happened here, and it was Henselwood playing well on right back. And what we saw here was Estupiñán was back, I guess, fit and good to go. So Estupiñán back on his left back role. Lamptey was back on the right back, but Lamptey had to get hurt in the second half. You had to bring him off. And once that happened, Brighton were not nearly as fluent, and Estupiñán actually got caught on a couple of the movements. Uh, that's kind of the first half. I mean, the first half too. Richarlison probably could have. He wasn't bad, but he forced both keepers are honestly pretty good at keeping goals out. Because Richarlison probably could have had a couple. Madison and Kulishevsky had good looks at goal as well in that first half, so Will still kept them in the game. And Brighton maybe could have had more than one if not for Vicario. Vicario was probably their best player in that first half. So Spurs were taking a while to get going, and then they get going here. And it is a player that they've been missing. So Sarr. But one thing to say is in the first half, another reason why they were poor was Betancourt. Betancourt was just losing the ball, and I think he lose the ball first that led to the PK. And he tries to lose the ball like 4 times here, but he keeps winning it back. So he doesn't give up. He keeps with it. Uh, and then he's able to find Kulishevsky. He's on the touchline, kind of unmarked, and Kulishevsky sees Sarr making a clever run in front of him, and he plays a perfect through ball to run onto. And then Sarr gets into the box. He tries to square it to Richarlison, but Dunk is there. He blocks it, and Dunk has to do this because it's going to be a tap in. But the Dunk, goes to ground, and the ball basically, when he blocks it, ball basically bounces off the goalpost, and Sarr sticks with it, and he's able to kind of put it away. But the goal comes in the beginning with Richarlison just being a threat in the box again. The right place at the right time. And if Dunk doesn't make that play, again, it's a tap in. So you see Sarr made the play to go to Richarlison first, and then instead of trying to be the hero from the tight angle, because if he tries to beat the keeper first time, he probably doesn't score. But because he tries to be unselfish, he's actually rewarded, comma-wise, to get the goal anyways. And then there's a big chance here where Brendan Johnson has a shot right to the keeper. Richarlison is trying to help out with the second ball is kind of near the halfway line. He finds Madison on the ball, and he threads in a pass to pick out Son, running centrally. And then Son sees Johnson making a run ahead. Everything is good here, but Johnson can't get a good enough shot to trouble still. But Estupiñán here is just lucky because he's beaten here. Johnson came on in the second half and was quite good. And then there was a big chance for Brighton with Mitoma to Ansu Fati. It's a very similar moment in the first half where Mitoma, got the ball in the box, had a really nice dribble, and in the first half, Mitoma tried to beat Jason Steele or tried to beat Vicario, and he forced a really good save from Vicario, but Welbeck was actually there for a tap in. Here, Mitoma does do the right pass. He plays it to Ansu Fati, and Fati, it's not the easiest chance, but it is a chance. Fati with his left foot tries to one-time it and gets the finish all wrong. He actually ends up missing it wide. If he gets any of this on target, I don't think, because it's on the ground, it's basically a pass in. I don't think there's any way the keeper can get down to it. So massive chance there that for Brighton, and it comes back to punish them because in the 96th minute, Tottenham get their second goal with Brendan Johnson, and I think it's a fitting goal to win the game because it features Spurs playing from the back, getting things right, like they were trying to do all game, and it features another instance of someone choosing to do a square ball, then go for goal themselves. And so Richarlison first shows for the ball, and he gets it from a good pass from Ben Davies. Richarlison one times it to Son, who quickly finds Madison. Both Son and Richarlison continue the run. Madison plays a very good forward ball to pick them out, and here Spurs have an overload. Richarlison carries the ball till he gets engaged, and then releases it to Son to make a run. And then Son sees Johnson streaking ahead of the post, or it's streaking back post. Son plays it. Johnson has this time does great to get that finish spot on because he missed that chance earlier and hammers it back in the net. And then Estupiñán did not enjoy when he came on, and he's late to react, and he's the first one playing Son on side, so he screws up there. And then when he reacts late, all he does is he allows Son to play it to Johnson because Johnson is behind the ball but also in front of Estupiñán. So just not his best return to form. It was a bit of a bizarre game because the first half it did feel it was all Brighton, but second half I felt it was all Spurs outside of a couple moments with Mitoma. 16 shots and 6 on target. Brighton only 6 shots and 3, so that kind of says it too. Possession was 53% Tottenham, Brighton 47. Tottenham with 447 passes with 85% accuracy. Brighton 394. Brighton had 800 passes last game, so that just shows how much different last game was than this one, and really good adjustments I thought by Tottenham in the second half because they were second best I thought in the first, and the way that Tottenham used Richarlison and Madison I think confused Brighton a little bit in the second half, and that is kind of worth saying too because for as good as Brighton can be, they almost use Richarlison kind of like the way that the way that they've used the Brighton used Ferguson last year because Richarlison wasn't just being a threat to be in the top; he was dropping in to be an outlet in midfield to kind of be a number to kind of play stuff off. And it looks like Richarlison is helping out to do that without even scoring. So he had a really good game as well. I thought it was a good response by Betancourt because he wasn't necessarily his best in the first half. He was one of the reasons why they were poor. He was much better in the second half. Saar back helps them, and Son being back. Son was back, and that was kind of the story into the game. And he didn't start, but he came on in the second half, and what an impact he had. But another thing to say is uh, Spurs have a player like Madison that it doesn't feel like Brighton necessarily have. Maybe it can be Adam Lallana in between moments, but it doesn't necessarily seem like they have someone that can just make that pass in between lines. Sometimes that can struggle a little bit. So here, I thought both teams. I thought it was a pretty even game. But like both teams trying to play beat each other, applying to pass through each other's press. Uh, it was also a storyline coming into this where Brighton kind of beat Spurs handily only a few weeks ago back in December. It was a 4-0 kind of game, and then in the 88th minute, and then Spurs got a couple late to make it a little bit more respectable. Uh, no Yao Pedro though was big, and Veltman had to come on in the second half, and Estupiñán were gassed on the game-winning goal. So the two fullbacks were kind of at their own doing again, and Fadi had that chance that happened in the 78th minute. Maybe it converts and things change. But another thing too is the difference between the two sides is outside of Madison. I didn't well. It didn't seem like there was much difference between the two sides outside of Madison. And maybe Lalana can somewhat kind of do something like that, but they don't really have a guy like a do it all kind of guy to create for them at times. Last week we saw it was really Yao Pedro, to be honest, kind of being in that role, and they don't seem to necessarily have that, and so that could maybe something they need to recruit. But yeah, it is what it is. Um, Right now, I mean, again, what Deserve been able to do with this team because it doesn't feel like it's where they should be in the table. Welbeck was so good in that first half, but he wasn't. They weren't really able to continue that. It was only in spurts. Uh, Ferguson hasn't really been able to catch on, and they were missing Al Pedro, and man, did they miss him? And they, one player that I actually can say that can maybe do a little bit of the Madison role is Enciso, and I don't know when they're gonna get him back, but, man, do they miss him. Fati had only returned in this game and was rusty, and you saw it. Maybe Fati, had been able to, get a couple of minutes in his legs beforehand. Maybe he puts that chance away, so and then I'll move on to Newcastle and Nottingham Forest. And I am going long a little bit. And I was kind of fearing that, but it was kind of it was going to happen. I wanted to speak on what happened with Arsenal. I'm not going to do that every single week, but I wanted to do it here. Newcastle will go on to win, beating Nottingham Forest 3-2. And this is a bit of a helter skelter game as well. A bit of a surprise. I was trying to watch Leverkusen, and it was 2-2 at halftime, so I had to switch over. And second half wasn't necessarily as good. I actually thought Newcastle were holding on a little bit. A couple of times when it looked like Nottingham Forest was actually doing a decent job to get some runs on the back line, but at the same time, all it takes is a moment of mislaps, and what happens for the third goal is someone on Nottingham Forest is trying to pass from the back, and Bruno is the first one to recognize it. Someone's trying to pass to Morgan Gibbs White, and Bruno immediately recognizes it and runs and intercepts the pass. And then from there, no one's really going near him. And Bruno basically tells the keeper to get the ball out of the net with a great finish, curly finish for his second goal of the game and their third. And that's basically how they win the game. Uh, Going into this, it was like Newcastle back to themselves attack wise. They scored 4 goals versus Luton. But it was also this was a game that was big too because they lost it back in December with the Chris Wood hat trick. Chris Wood wasn't able to play this game. So maybe that kind of factored in. And with Nottingham Forest, they were able to have Awani back, and you had Anthony Elanga, and you were wondering, would with Dan Burns starting again, would that be an issue? Because that was an issue in the first meeting. And lo and behold, yes, that was an issue because that actually is where Nottingham Forest get their second goal. It's just it's just Anthony Elanga making a really good run, basically splitting Botman and Dan Burn, and it's a really good passage play. It's a really good build up play. I think they're able to. I think it's Dominguez that drops in, and then he's able to find Morgan Gibbs White in the middle of the field, and then Gibbs White kind of has a Kevin De Bruyne kind of pass. It's a really good through ball from there. But again, it's one of those where you could kind of see it coming before the game, and then it happened. And the only thing to say after that is Eddie Howe stuck to his guns. It didn't take Dan Burn out, and Dan Burn actually had a decent go in the second half. Uh, but this game didn't have a controversy. So before the third Bruno goal, it looked like Awani was in behind, and what happened is he's brought down, and so it's a long ball by Matt Sells. It's a fantastic ball by the keeper. It's like a 75-yard flighted ball, and it finds Awani, who's able to sprint past Sven Botman. Sven Botman did not have his best game. And Awani is alone in the box. Botman first clatters into him. I think there's contact enough there. He goes to ground. He doesn't get the ball, and I think he gets some of his leg. And then Dubravka gets a touch on Awani too, for good measure. And Awani goes to ground. Maybe it's soft, but nothing is given here. And I was amazed by that because it definitely the contact affected him. Otherwise, he's got a chance to because the ball isn't necessarily running away from him. He's got a chance to get this on goal, to get it past the keeper. So. Uh, I was a bit surprised that wasn't looked at. I mean, Nottingham Forest with 13 shots, they outshot Newcastle 2-1. 13-7, 1.5 xG to Newcastle's point 4. Uh, but Nottingham Forest with the less possession, 288 passes, kind of what you expect. Good passing numbers from Newcastle, 45. You don't always see that. But it did feel like they were unlucky. Large parts of the game, it seemed like they were on the ascendancy. Alanga and Dan Burn, Botman was causing issues, and Callum Hudson-Odoi, I haven't spoken about him, was equally dangerous in his own right, and they get the second goal right before halftime with him kind of trying to do a little curl like he did last week versus Bournemouth, and it's the second best thing because it doesn't necessarily go in, but it deflects. It gets the shot to kind of deflects in. But you have to have that shot to go in. It's also good to see him too because it looked like he was maybe going to be out injured for a little bit. So I thought Trippier was struggling a little bit with Tavares' runs, and Hudson-Odoi was getting some good runs inside. This was a decent performance from Nottingham not to get a point. So I think we'll maybe start there. With Newcastle, they do get the points because of Bruno Guimaraes, and it doesn't even feel like he's playing his best position that suits him. But whether or not he's a holder, or DM, or maybe just kind of a do it all kind of midfielder, he dimes that interception well. He does defensive work here, and man, what a finish he has! And he is always just looking to direct play for them. So and Dubravka had a positive as well. He's come into a bit of a rough situation playing. I think he's played okay. They've lost Pope, and it doesn't seem like a lot of people have looked at that as the reason for their downfall from November and December. And it would make sense that he would be some kind of that story, but it doesn't seem like he is. It seems like everyone's kind of agreed to the consensus that it was really just the players' legs being gassed and being and injuries than necessarily the keeper. And Dubravka in moments has come up big. Now I think he got lucky not giving a PK here. But for the most part, he's been able to keep them in games with some pretty big saves. And with Nottingham Forest, one thing to say is I was wondering if Elanga and Awani can kind of be like Nuno Espirito Santos, Raul, and Adama Traore. Elanga really is as rapid as Adama Traore. Now maybe he's not as he doesn't have the muscular arms. He doesn't have the oil. For people that remember Adama Traore, but Elanga is quite rapid and quick. And again, it is kind of funny that Man United just decided to give him away. He looks good. And the interesting thing here is no Mangala. I thought maybe they were missing a little bit of him, what he had to offer. I didn't think Ryan Yates was necessarily the best complement to Dominguez, but that said, I thought Dominguez was actually quite good for them. He was pretty good in possession. A lot of their positive movements I thought was from Dominguez having some good passes, which is not great for Americans because if you look at this roster wondering where is Giorena going to be able to play, you would probably think it would be one of the pivots, so either Dominguez, which isn't really great. You probably would think, well, maybe it could be. It's not really going to be one of the attacking spots because it's not really going to offer width. Maybe it could be where Morgan Gibbs White is playing kind of centrally in the cam spot. But in this so far, 2 or 3 games in, Gibbs White kind of has that spot locked to himself, and we'll have to see. We'll have to see if this move works or not. He wasn't getting playing time at Dortmund. Maybe it can change here, but so far it hasn't been great. Uh, and then I'll move on to Chelsea and Crystal Palace. This game did not feel a 3-0, 3-1 kind of game. Crystal Palace actually get the first goal with a really good Jefferson Lerma strike. And then Conor Gallagher kind of comes to life and haunts the club that kind of made him his name. He had a really good loan spit at Crystal Palace, and he thanked them by not only scoring on them twice, dunking on them, celebrating with the Chelsea fans in front of him. He is a Chelsea player, but insult to injury, I guess you could say. And then Enzo Fernandez gets one late. Both the second Conor Gallagher goal and the Enzo goal came after extra time though, in like the 90th minute. So this game was not nearly the way that, the 3-1 that it ended with. It was surprising a little bit because Pochettino, got the response after, he kind of got embarrassed a little bit, first in that Liverpool game. He got a response beating Aston Villa kind of comfortably. Probably the best Chelsea has looked, 3-0. There was no Thiago Silva in that lineup. It was Batiashile, and apparently Batiashile, he's kind of got an injury. So uh, in comes Levi Colwell, but Colwell was able to play, and Colwell and Diaz, they had to actually finish this game. Thiago Silva actually got hurt in the second half. And I thought they were better. They were better versus Aston Villa without Thiago Silva. They were playing higher up. I thought they were significantly more compact. It's not easy to do because you've got Ollie Watkins on the other end versus Aston Villa on the midweek, and I thought they did a decent job there. But because they were more compact, I thought they were able to get more ball pressure in midfield, and I thought they really made Babaku Kamara, who's a good player, struggle. And they were able to win the ball back and counter on teams, and that's kind of how they did there. I thought it was a good appearance in that game for Nicholas Jackson, who actually played a left wing. And Nkuku played, and everything was like, well, maybe Chelsea are working a little something here. And then they turned around here, and everyone remembers what happened with Crystal Palace and Brighton, just as nightmares can be, because it wasn't just losing; it was the injuries. It was losing as a out till apparently mid March. It looks like they've lost Olise for 2 months. And if Palace do decide to move on from Hodgson, it probably will be because of that. He didn't need to risk losing Elise in a 3-0 kind of game when the game was already dead and killed, and he did. It looks like they're going to be without Mark Gahey for a little bit. That's good news for Americans because it looks like Chris Richards is going to be back in the center back spot. The bad news is he's going to get dunked on because Palace are not good enough right now, unfortunately for them. You're playing Munez, who's kind of new at the right back spot because you're missing Joe Ward. They brought in this guy Adam Wharton, who is a center back from Blackburn or a Crystal Palace. I mean, a championship side. He had to play in midfield, and he didn't play terribly, but at the same time, there's not a lot of passing. I think it was like 150 passes, like 55% accuracy, and they were doing a decent job to somewhat make this hard for Chelsea. But that's really all it was. Mateta was doing a decent job to hold up things as far as what they were able to do attack wise. Edward came on in the second half, and he I thought he did a little bit better job to at least force some moments. Uh, it looked like maybe he was even brought down. They didn't really look at it. There was França got the start. He had a rough go at it in the beginning, but I thought he kicked on in the second half. So there was some positives, but it was rough, and you don't really know what Palace can do. I mean, they got the first goal with a worldie from Lerma, but I thought it was also a case of Chelsea being really poor in the first half in their respect. So they had something like 80% of the ball, and I don't even think they registered a shot in that first half. And one thing you're wondering is, was it was it Thiago Silva being back where they were playing deeper in lines, wasn't a case of them not being able to risk their fullbacks going up. They're playing Madueke as one of the right backs or one of the wingers, and I was trying to play Cole Palmer through the middle. That wasn't really working. Jackson actually was out wide again. No Nkunku to start, no Sterling to start. Sterling actually came on and that led to one of the goals in the second half. But Madueke wasn't really working out, and it was almost like he was clogging up what maybe someone on the right back would have what Gustu would have wanted to do. And they actually get the goal in the second half by Gustu being a little further up in the second half, getting across into the box where Gallagher is able to finish. So it took a while for Chelsea to get going. They weren't really great. Uh, the change was I thought we saw Colwell and Gusto be a little more uh, uh, be a little more advanced, or I guess like taking more chances, making those runs to be further down the wing that would kind of push everyone a little bit more inside. You saw Cole Palmer shift a little bit more out wide to make space for Nkuku to play. I thought that made him better. I thought when Sterling came on, he made better decisions. They get the second goal, I think, from him first getting on the ball. I thought Casado actually had a better game than maybe he's been given credit for. Where he every goal I think in Chelsea's favor comes from Casado making a very quick thought to play a progressive minded pass, 15, 20 yards to find someone's feet so they can quickly win the ball back and turn and do a transition or counter. So I thought Casado was better in the second half too. So that's kind of where we are with this game. It was not necessarily ideal for either. Crystal Palace did have 13 shots and 4. Chelsea with 14 shots and 5 on target, but 13 shots came in the second half, which kind of relies or goes back to what I was saying. Uh, it looks like they maybe are going to be without Thiago Silva for the Carabao final, and Chelsea fans are going to think, "Oh man, that's our captain. We're really going to miss him." I think that benefits them. I think Levy Colwell is a better center back as it is now, and not to beat a dead horse because I've done it a couple of times. One thing I wanted to add is I saw the Netflix show Captains recently, and I didn't know he was diagnosed with tuberculosis at 18. And frankly, he's an inspirational story. Not just to be able to overcome that, but to have the career he's had as well. I mean, his career is up there as some of the best to ever play the center back position. Really, the only thing he doesn't have is a uh, a World Cup trophy, a World Cup final. But it's certainly a career we're celebrating, but I do think it's also one that's kind of run its course because as good as he is defending, and he had to make a couple of those 1v1, big 1v1s in this game as well. His first thought is to run backwards, and when he has to defend out wide, teams can go at you. And I think just every team kind of fancies themselves being able to do that. And again, you can't play at a high level if you can't play with a high defensive line anymore. Diazy and Colwell allows Chelsea to do that. Their lines will be significantly more compact. It'll be closer to Casado. Casado won't be as as isolated. And so I think that's where they're at, and they got Man City on the weekend. So we'll probably see this tested out immediately because they'll probably be under pressure. They were able to get a 4-4 draw. They were able to escape or to win a point in the November fixture list, and it'll probably will be Lovie Colwell and Diaz as the center back pairing with Gusto and maybe Chilwell. So we'll have to see. And Cole Palmer, everyone knows, former City player, and Cole Palmer. It took a while to get going, but he was quite good in the second half for Chelsea as well. So will Cole Palmer versus old City side again? That'll be a story. And with Palace, given the lineup, the players they're without, I think they played all right. They weren't really great, but they played all right. What was the actual passing number? It was 159 for 67%. That's just not good enough. Uh, Edouard, I did think was strong in the second half. I thought Amahata came on and was decent. They have a guy named Oshu to maybe come on. He's given them some minutes here and there. I think that's kind of where they're at. I mean, really great goal by Jefferson Lerma. Adam Warden had some decent moments in that pivot. I thought Mateta had some decent hold up play, but I'm grasping at straws a little bit. So and I think unfortunately for them, It's the final. It's like the 90th minute. There's no reason for Tyreek Mitchell to gamble. Palace are trying to attack and commit numbers four, and they just kind of get caught. And that is when then Palmer gets all alone, and that's really where the and Palmer is able to pick out Gallagher for the second goal. It is relegation level where they're at though, and I think Hodgson got his response. They weren't as bad as they were versus Brighton, but they still weren't great either. And unfortunately for them, it's not the second time that they've collapsed in stoppage time, where I think it was versus Arsenal when that game should have been like a 3-0 kind of game, and it was five because they gave away to Martinelli, and kind of a similar kind of matter, to be honest. Just allowing two goals to get to runs in behind you within the 5 minutes of stoppage time. When the game's kind of already killed, that should not happen. So they're without Eze, they're without Zaha, Marquehi, Dokore. It's looking rough, and whether or not they decide to move off Corey Hodgson or not, I think they're 5 points clear from safety. It is. I think they're going to be reliant on what other teams do than necessarily them. And I'm going to have to try to really hurry up because I don't want this to be a 3-hour episode. I'll try to kind of cover everything all at once. So Luton and Sheffield. This was one of the more surprises one. Cam Archer with the first goal. Cam Archer starts. We haven't seen him start. So uh, decent job by Chris Wilder to recognize, hey, you need to change something. And so that was one of the good changes. And then McAtee gets a PK to make it 2-0. Very controversial of both this PK and the Luton PK that they get, because both kind of cancel each other out in some respect, because it's VAR nonsense, VAR handball nonsense. And then Vinny Sousa with the third. A really good goal. I think it's unfortunately Russ Barkley kind of gets caught on the ball. First, it's Vinny Sousa winning the ball off Barkley. It's not an easy feat to do. And then Sheffield do really well to work the ball from left side to the right side, top of the box. I think it's James Madison, or it's maybe it's Tom Healy. Not Madison. McAtee. Someone has a really good pass to pick up Vinny Sousa top of the box, and he has a great finish. And I've kind of said it before. Vinny Sousa is kind of the one player where if they do go down, I feel like he will get some looks. I think he's a better player than what he's shown. Maybe in a different setup, he would do a little bit better. But really, the game is about Cam Archer. I think it's funny how they're down 5-0 last week versus Villa, just getting absolutely just dominated, not really competing. And Chris Wilder brings on Cam Archer, and they started to create some chances for him. Now the game's already over, but it's not insignificant when you see someone still running and you see someone still giving some effort. And Archer was rewarded with the start, so Wilder saw that. And another thing too is Vinny Sousa nearly scored in the last few minutes versus Aston Villa, and the only reason why it was shocked off because of like a shaky VAR call when they did lines. So the two players that played their hearts out when the game was already 5-0, Wilder maybe learned something about his team, and those are the two players that are kind of the heroes here. And so I think that's kind of fitting. That could sound like nonsense, like I'm trying to say something that isn't, but I do think there's something there. I do think it's just crazy how Cam Archer hasn't really been able to play much. And you don't really understand why. He doesn't have many goals, but what he does have is he has a finish on him. And what he does is he just burns. I think it's Berkey, or it's Osha. He just absolutely burns one of the third center backs, similar to what we saw last week versus Newcastle, where it was Anthony Gordon kind of did the same thing, just basically just ran at Osho, and unfortunately Osho did not have the best game here. And I think with Luton Town, that's kind of the unfortunate thing too. You can maybe do some things offensively, but it looks like teams recognize they can still go at you too. And if you're going to stay up, you're going to have to be able to stop. You're going to have to be able to get clean sheets. And they had 20 shots and 5 on target. Sheffield only had 7 shots and 3 on target, and Sheffield only had 100 passes. But it doesn't really matter because if they were able to get those finishes. So really, it's not. It's a way for Sheffield to rebound and respond, give the fans something to believe in and support, because all a fan really wants is for a team to do that, to compete, to support. I think it maybe helped that it was a no pressure game. Maybe it helped that it was away. to be honest, in a funny thing because if they had started poorly at a home game, the fans maybe would have gotten on them and left again. So I think it maybe helped that it was actually an away game, and the Wilder tactics, playing Cam Archer, dinosaur or not, he did a good job to recognize to reward that effort from the second half of the Villa game. And another thing too is I think they did a good job preventing Ogbene from being that influential. And they draped Barkley all game. They did a good job to really prevent him from being able to influence that much. Now, Lutton did have 20 shots, but it wasn't really much. A lot of it wasn't really that threatening. And Luton probably went into this as heavy favorites. And what's funny enough is it's crazy how I can be responsible, or I can be a victim of this too, or guilty of this too. When you go recency bias, and if have you looked at this contest back in November, December, you would have thought this would be a 6 pointer. This would be a toss up, and the way it played out, it kind of was. So yeah, it wasn't best defensively. So. Uh, Rob Edwards has done a great job to get their offense going, and they still had 20 shots again this game. But at the same time, you're gonna need to get some clean sheets, and it's unlucky also that they had the PK called against them to go 2-0 down, but at the same time they were able to get cancel it out with the PK that they got as well. They just weren't able to necessarily make the other one count. Uh, and then Wolves and Brentford. Brentford do on to beat kind of their bogey team in Wolves 2-0. And the reason why I say that is Brentford have struggled a little bit versus Wolves lately. Wolves knocked them out of the FA Cup, and Wolves were also the team that actually took out Norgard. And I think in the FA Cup game, they even got a red card in that game. And then that game ended. The first one ended 1-1, and then it had to go to I think a replay, and Wolves beat Brentford in the replay. But before the FA Cup, it was they played each other in January, or I guess like late December, and that game I think was like 4-1 or something like that. And Nathan Collins had a horror show of a game. So it's a couple of moments when Brentford Wolves have gotten the better of Brentford. So it was good for them to get the rebound, and Brentford did play well versus Man City, and so it was good for them to return with that. And Norgard, actually, the reason why I say that with Norgard is Norgard was hurt, and he was able to come back and return and actually gets the first goal. So good for Norgard. I thought Marpai was good again in this game. Maybe he could have scored, but he was influential again. There that Tony and Neil Marpai partnership is starting to work out pretty well. Uh, that midfield of Norgard and Jensen and Janelt isn't terrible. Jensen is actually quite good at being able to feed in passes. Brentford only had like 100 passes themselves, 150 passes themselves, so that's not great. But at the same time, you get the first goal, you get the opening goal, you're able to defend and sit deep. But another thing that happened too is Wolves got unlucky. So they had that great win versus Chelsea at the Stamford Bridge. But what also happened is in the midweek they got Wangley Chan back, but it looks like he has a calf injury. So got him back from Asia Cup, but it looks like he's going to be out sidelined for a little bit for injury. And then a couple 20 minutes into the game, 5 minutes, whatever it was, they lost Cunha to injury, and that really kind of lost what they were able to do. Attack minded, forward wise. Neto was still able to make some runs. It forced Flecken to make some pretty good big saves. Flecken actually did make some pretty good saves, so that's what's kind of highlighting as well. He's starting to be a better player for them, and it just wasn't really the best day for Wolves because of the lost two players, and then Brentford I think exercised some demons. We got the first goal from the corner kick. And that really did allow them to kind of dictate the game. Wolves 17 shots, 5 on target. Brentford only 9 and 6. Brentford with only 158 passes and 61%. Wolves with 559, but they weren't really able to create much because without Cunha, it was really only Neto just kind of stick on him, and Neto was able to get behind a couple of times. I think he even hit the post, but it wasn't enough. So the positives I had is Flecken starting to play some better. I think Reguilon's starting to look a pretty good pickup for them. He's gotten a couple starts in a row. That's good. And then with Tony, what more can you say about him? It's going to be hard to replace him. But also, it looks like maybe they have. I think I saw that they picked up someone named Igor Thiago. I don't know anything about him, but he's a striker, age 22, from the Brazilian league. They have Weisa to get back. They have Mbremo if they don't sell him to come back next year. Kevin Shada to maybe return from injury, and Malpai. So maybe you'll add him. I don't know if they're going to try to do Antonio Nusa like they did at the beginning of the transfer window. It kind of fell through, but maybe you try for him as well. But it looks like maybe they have the idea that Tony is going to move on, and they're going to bring in this Igor Thiago from the Brazilian league. We'll have to see. But another thing too is I think they're going to struggle to keep on to Norgard. And I think it's fitting he gets the first goal. I think he's kind of the unsung hero in the team for what he offers as possession from a deep high holder player. Not a lot of teams have this, and he's quietly like just kind of hid at Brentford. I think he's had some injury issues, so he's not always able to go a full season. I think that's maybe a reason why Brentford have been able to keep him. But what happens in this summer is Euros happens, and Denmark plays England. So there are going to be a lot of people watching England, and they're going to see Norgard and Declan Rice. I think Norgard's going to show up Declan Rice in that England game. I actually think it's possible Denmark will have the better midfield between Højbjerg, Norgard, and Jensen, and maybe a Damsgaard will feature in somewhere, than what England will have. And it's funny enough is that is the matchup that was the semifinal in 2021 Euros. So we get that in the group stage. I think if Norgard plays well, a lot of teams will be like, "Whoa, we want him," because he can offer something in a pivot, but he can also do. When Brentford do a 4-3-3, you can play him as a single pivot, a single holder, and he's good. He's good defensively. He's good on the ball. Uh, he's one of the more underrated holders slash DMs in the league, if not all of Europe. And he's just kind of a little hidden gem on Brentford. And I think they've been able to keep him for a couple of these seasons. I was kind of expecting teams to scout him before this. I think after that Euros performance, if he's gonna play as good as I think he is, and I do believe he'll start for them, uh, it'll be hard. It'll be hard to kind of see that. And then another thing to say about Brentford is whether or not by desperation or not, Thomas Frank has done well to move back to basically 3-5-2 just fully at all times. And maybe it didn't work when Malpai was in the equation with Embremo or Wiza, but with Tony, you can do this now. And Tony all he's done since returning is just scoring for fun, scoring multiple goals, scoring first time finishes. He's making good runs. He's always going to be someone to hold on to the ball. Uh, he's clever. He can pick out a pass. He's do it all really. And Malpai is clever enough in his own right. He's I think I saw like someone online call him the Batman and Robin of the EPL at the moment, and they kind of are. They're kind of feeding off each other. And Malpai doesn't really score, but he was at the heart of everything positive that Brentford were doing. And I am worried. Liverpool do go to the GMAC this Sunday or this Saturday, early kickoff, and Tony has given them fits in the past as well. I'm a little worried about that. I hope Allison will be able to play that game, not necessarily Keller, because I think there's going to be a lot of physical battles in the box, whether or not it's on set pieces or crosses. And Brentford have given Liverpool fits both at Anfield and at this damn stadium. So I am a little concerned. And with Wolves, I think it's just unlucky. Not just to lose the players they have. It was a moment when it was almost a 1-1 kind of game when it looked like Dawson had scored, but they chalked it off for an offside. So and then it was only just Neto to be able to do stuff. So not necessarily great for them. And I think the problem for them is you're in a theme for a lot of these teams that are kind of stuck between first and second gear, where they're not necessarily Europe good, but they're not really close to relegation. And so the problem really is you're not having enough bench depth to be able to handle injuries, to be able to keep that consistency going. So Wolves are maybe going to slide without Cunha. We'll have to see. And then another team that kind of falls into that are these two teams with Fulham and Bournemouth. And I think Fulham go on to win 3-1. First comes from Bobby Wade. There's just kind of a slip in the box that Reed's able to finish, and then Munoz has kind of kicked on for them. There's just a William cross into the back post that it looks like he's going to Reed, but Reed kind of heads it towards goal, and then Neto. It looks like the goalkeeper is going to get it, but Munoz is first one to get to the ball, and he sticks out a leg to be brave, and he's able to direct it into the net, and then Senese gets one back off a corner kick, and then there's a really good cross by William in the second half to find Paulinho at the back post, and so that's kind of how that game went. I mean, both teams are kind of in that awkward situation like Wolves are in, where I feel safety is secure, but there's not really a ton of motivation to perform week in and week out. So maybe complacency can set in. Fulham with 7 shots and 6 on target. Bournemouth with 25 and only 4. Efficiency beats quantity. I guess 5 big chances though for Fulham. I think, and that's kind of where you start with them. They're missing Jimenez. They brought in Broja, and sometimes you can just bring in a player, just fires up another player because of competition. And Rodrigo Munoz has taken on the challenge, uh, asking Marcus Silva to say Broja who. He's been fantastic for them. Scored last week as well, so 2 goals in as many weeks, and he's making good runs, and he's being an option to cross the ball into. He's also being an option to hold on to the ball. He's making runs into channels. Nothing but positive there. And then Williams, like one of the best crossers in the league, still giving his age, and he still has his pace to him. But that's up 2 goals with his finishes, and he has a pretty good run and a situation set up by Tom Carney that could have been a goal. So forced a good save, so he could have scored in that game. And with Bournemouth, I don't feel like they're able to feed Solanke much recently. So I don't know if the midfield has changed in this game. No Philip Billing. Clivert has lost maybe his starting spot. So it was Alex Scott that didn't necessarily seem to work. I do wonder if Tyler Adams will ever be able to feature for them. He's still technically a player, but it doesn't look like he'll be fit till like April, if that. So they are leaking oil a little bit after that strong November run. They've been leaking oil since Liverpool kind of battered them a little bit at their ground, and they do have Man City coming up. They have first Newcastle and then Man City, so it doesn't necessarily look like it's going to get better, but we'll have to see. And I ran through that a little quickly towards the end because I've spent a lot of time on Arsenal, and it is what it is. Uh, but a fun weekend, and again the title race is only starting to heat up, and a lot of this really is going to come down to who can stay healthy, because Europe's starting to heat up again. Champions League, Europa. We have FA Cup still. We have the Carabao on the way. I think that's at the end of the month, and so a lot of games, and it really is going to be coming down to a case of that. Some. What's funny enough is so many players have been out for like 3 or 4 months. Now they're starting to actually come back into the squad, and so some teams are starting to actually kind of see the opposite effect, and some teams are starting to actually get healthy again. So that is what can happen with a really long season. So lots of ways for this to still change a little bit, and we'll have to see if what kind of bumps we get in the next week. So until then, you stay squatting and stop recording.